All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to have an action-packed day. This is the third Real Estate and Business Expo. Unfortunately, Michael is in California, but I have a much better looking co-host here today. Just kidding. We got Trent Lee here in the studio. We got Michael Zuber remote. Today's going to be a really fun day. First off, we're going to start with Trent. We're going to talk about buying businesses and selling businesses and all the things in between. And the nice thing is Trent is also into real estate. So what do you do to build wealth? You make your active money selling businesses, and you got to do something with your money. So we're going to have a great conversation there. Then we have Ari O'Brien from Red Rock Franchising. She's also a Las Vegas but she's on vacation. She's going to tap in here via live stream, and she represents 7 or 8 different franchise models. We call them FSOs, but we're going to go talk high level about those business models, all different home service, B2B, and some other types of businesses. She's going to do a quick overview of several of those brands so we can learn about those opportunities. And then Zuber is going to pick up and do a segment on 2026, what to like, all the things. He's for people that don't know Zuber, he's extremely smart, extremely disciplined, kind of boring, meaning he just had a buy box and he bought single family. We'll dive into that story, but he did it the tried and true way versus some of these flashier people that you see doing large syndication, raising capital. And right now, those types of investors are losing their shirt in some instances. So, not everything you do in life has to be high risk, but I think the big thing we're going to learn with Trent and Zuber is the reason I think they're successful is because they're extremely disciplined and they're always learning something new. And I think that's the biggest takeaway is that there's no magic potion out there. It's just about showing up in the right room. Just like I met Zuber 12, 13 years ago at a conference in Virginia, and we both lived in California, but showing up in these rooms, and Trent was at the SBA loan broker conference a few weeks back or a month and a half ago or whatever, and I knew who he was because I watch his content, and I mean, you got to know who Trent Lee is if you're in the business acquisition space, and so, we just built rapport with him. So I think a lot of that is getting in the right rooms. Although this is a virtual room, that's a big takeaway is like showing up. Zuber does a ORAT, which is one rental at a time event February every year here in Las Vegas at the Blind Center. So if you're not familiar with that, we're also going to share. Zuber has a school community. We're going to share the link later for that, as well as Trent has a school community where he has 30 hours plus of content because. As a business broker, it's very difficult to work with buyers, but he actually trains the buyers on how to actually source deals and so forth, and he'll help them every step of the way. So a lot of value here today. Super exciting. Super excited to be here and put this event on. And I appreciate Zuber for being here for the third time. And hopefully we do this for 300 times more before we're dead. Maybe more.
I hope so.
Without further ado, we're going to go into our first guest speaker / co-host, Trent Lee. I told you how I met Trent recently, although I knew of him for a long, long time because, he markets very well. And if you're looking at businesses, I always look at Biz by Sell, and Trent's got all these listings. And so anyways, what's amazing, Zuber, is he's able to be a top producer in this space, which is a very fragmented industry. And he's able to do it with just himself and his assistant, meaning he doesn't have a huge team. And Zuber, you didn't hear our last podcast, but Trent has owned and operated several businesses, exited out of business 14 years ago, give or take. He had 90 employees. And then the reason he got into business brokerage is because he saw that it was lacking a lot of sophistication. So he brought kind of the M&A world service levels down to the kind of smaller businesses, and that's basically how he became successful. And then he essentially is a student of the game, got certified to be to do valuations on businesses. Obviously, he did go to Harvard and then Texas A&M, so he's pretty smart to begin with. But other than that, and he also owns rentals. So we're going to talk about when I brought up in the podcast about this expo and asked Trent to join. I was telling him about Michael Zuber, who wrote the book One Rental at a Time. Get your copy if you haven't already.
Hmm.
Trent said, I did that, right? That's how I did it. And so,
Or I'm still doing it.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we're going to dive into all that and more. But without further ado, Trent, thank you for joining us
Yeah.
again.
Glad to be
Thanks for
here.
being here. And, you know, just in a nutshell, I think the people out watching right now and the people that will watch replays might not be, some of them may own a business, but a lot of them are aspiring business owners. Zuber, do you have any quick questions or questions you would like to ask?
Well, I think the first thing that'd be great for Trent to do is we have to assume that not everybody knows what a business broker is. So if Trent can kind of define what that is, why would a newbie or why would somebody come to a business broker? So I'd love to hear what it is, why it is. Obviously it's great to have a top producer there, but let's start with the audience and let's assume they don't know what that is.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a good business broker can make life so much easier if you're looking at an acquisition. However, a bad business broker literally becomes the stumbling block to getting deals done. And as Bo has mentioned, I went through the process myself a couple of times and was so unimpressed with the business brokers. I thought I could do a better job. And so I'm trying to, and I'll answer the question, be one of those business brokers that gets deals done, not the ones that become the stumbling block and the reason they don't get done. But to answer your question, business brokers essentially, most people are familiar with the real estate agent model, especially this audience. They act like a real estate agent for businesses. So they help you find a business, identify it, go through the process, walking them through due diligence, similar to like an inspection,
Mm,
lending approval, closing, whatever it happens to be. And so, really, the business broker almost is like a Sherpa through
mm.
the business acquisition process. At least the good ones should be guiding you through and educating you through every step of the way, talking about how to get deals done, not why the deal doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, one more question, Bo, before I throw it back to you. Using the real estate analogy, again, this audience probably appreciates that. At least in the residential market, it usually starts with the seller, right? They sign a listing agreement. Is
Hmm.
it fair to say on the business broker side, it might actually start with the buyer, right? You find somebody who wants to buy and then you go search, or is it 50-50, or what is that like buying a business? Because I would argue very few people in real estate buy off market. I know wholesalers love to talk about that, but when we look at total transactions, I don't know, it's 5, maybe 7%. Is it the same in business acquisition or is it closer to 50-50?
It's the opposite. It's closer to 99-1. 99 being the seller side. So
Okay,
it's
so it
very,
is.
yeah,
Okay.
it's
All right.
very difficult to, so buyers are, they're a dime a dozen. There are
Okay.
so many buyers out there. And
Interesting.
because it's so much more work than selling, there's buy side representation when you're buying a house. There is
Sure.
not a lot of buy side representation when you're buying a business because it is so much work. For every 100 buyers that I might work with, there might be one that actually closes a transaction versus I've never sold real estate, so I don't know what the metrics are, but 100 buy side buy side on the real estate side might have, I don't know, 50, 60 or
Yeah,
more that are really looking to
uh,
actually close on a house. And
yeah.
and so that's the model is I don't know anyone who's really been able to monetize the buy side of the business because it does take so much work. You've got to go through so many buyers to find one that actually closes. And then there's
Mm,
so much more work versus there's no such thing as the MLS like there
right.
is in real estate. And so it's so much work to be able to try and find a buy there's the buyer box which we'll talk about and then the buy box. Both of those we'll talk about today, but it's so much work to try and find a business that matches the buyer, and
Mm,
there's no centralized database to be able to search that. So, unfortunately, everything for the most part starts with the sell side.
okay. All right. Go ahead, Bo. I got more questions, but I'll let you
Yeah,
chime in on.
and you could definitely the business selling world is so much more fragmented. I mean, it just really is. It's like there's deals that never get listed because it's, somebody inside the company. But what I will say about business acquisition space is that if you do the work, Michael Zuber always says, do the work. And he's very like daily discipline. Those are some
Mm-hmm.
key words he always says, which is true. So if you do the work, the advantage of a business acquisition is you could potentially go from employee to owning a business that has seller's discretionary earnings of X in one move versus
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
buying one rental at a time for 10 years, right? So there's a little bit, there could potentially be a faster move to owning and cash flow,
For
although
sure.
there's a lot more risk, right? Because you got to become a good business owner. Like you can mess up a lot in real estate if it's just one rental property and you're not putting your life savings in it. So those are the variables. And so I came from a real estate background, and but I quickly realized that like I probably should have done it differently if I would have done it again. And at this point in my life, I'm like, well, if I really want the cash flow faster, I got more into business ownership because I figured like I just saw the numbers, right? The numbers don't lie. Well, sometimes they do, but I just saw that the potential of owning a cash flow business. And then if you could run the business and grow revenue and get a better net, you have an exit where you're essentially building equity, just like building up a house, building equity in a house, and that's where these sellers now, with all these baby boomers, are starting to sell and they're reaping. So there's a lot of you might be a $250,000 W-2 employee and then go buy a business and it replaces that 250, right? So you're not living that much better. You might have more work because now you're running a business, but the upside, I think, is where you're going to get the multiple return when you go to sell it in a few years because you're going to have something to sell versus staying in a high paid job where the only thing you're building is maybe the 401k.
Yeah, plus the ROI is so much greater. Obviously, it takes more work. There's more risk, but the ROI is so much greater. In the real estate world, everyone's familiar with the cap rate. We don't really use that terminology in the business world. We use a multiple of earnings, but in theory, they're basically the same thing. If you get a 10% cap rate on a real estate, that's fantastic. But in theory, that's basically like you're going to get back your full investment in 10 years. Same measurement goes on the business side. If you're paying a 3% multiple, essentially it's close to a 33% cap rate on there, a 30% cap rate. It's very similar. You can kind of reverse the math. Same way to measure, it's just stated in a different way. And so when you kind of compare, if you were to convert the market multiple to a cap rate, all of a sudden you got a 10% cap rate in real estate. Sounds pretty good. Compared to a 30% cap rate, 35% cap rate, 40% cap rate. In other words, we're using a measurement. All of a sudden that's like, wait, what's going on? Why is that so high? That's just the nature of how business valuations work.
Yeah, it's interesting because Zuber did it. He always says, "I'm not an entrepreneur. He knew he was in high tech sales and like he crushed it in the W-2 world, right? Because he was very driven. And then he was like, well, how do I really get ahead? And he started buying rental properties, one at a time. And then I might ask if he tells a story later on during his segment where I thought this was interesting. He had 8 units he had built, right? And then he made one transition with 1031 exchanges and went to 80 units. And like, that was the power. And so like, I'm not one or the other. I'm both. And that's where I came up with the triangle method. I think everybody should own real estate. I think everybody should own a business. And I think everybody should understand taxes and tax strategy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
Yeah.
so Zuber, like
Yep.
if you were, okay, rewind. So Zuber retired from corporate at 45. He's now, I think, 53. So he's not that old yet. And but let me give you some props to Zuber, just how disciplined this guy is. Every year he sets out, Trent, to do like one like Misagi, right? Is that what we call it, Misagi?
Masogi, yeah, whatever. It's called,
Misogi.
yeah.
So last year he said, he said, I'm gonna I'm gonna take my body fat, and then in a year's time. So he said when he took his body fat, he was at 34%. He said, I'm going to get, in a year's time, get to 10%.
Wow.
He ended up getting to 10.6, right? Was that what it was?
10.9.
10.9. So, I mean, that's just truly amazing. So I think that goes to a testament of people that are out there. And I want to dive in with Trent on this too. Is why are some people successful and why are others always failing? And obviously, you've become very successful. And what traits do you think you have that made you who you are today? Because I think that's the real core. Like, we can show you a business, but doesn't mean we could show you the best business in the world, but you could get in there and run it to the ground. What what advice you have for people out there like that really want to change their position? Everybody's here to do better in the world and whatever that is to them. So how did you become you?
It's such a good question. So I'll borrow a phrase from Zuber here. Do the work. Foundational, right? So I'll give you and there's a couple components here, but I'll give you just an example of each of them. I was at a conference, it was a couple of years ago now, and I'd gotten the award as the number one business broker in the country. And this business broker was talking to me about, man, how do you do it? What's the secret? Like they're asking for some type of silver bullet, this easy button that's just going to make it work. And so I was talking with him. I was giving him some good pointers, and then another broker that he knew kind of came off to the side, and he turned around and mentioned, I'm on, and I'm making this up. But it illustrates the point. I'm on episode like 84 of Game of Thrones. And I thought instantly to myself, that's your problem right there. I mean, if there's one thing that I don't do, I'm not sitting around watching TV, watching 84 episodes of whatever it happens to be. This guy has spent, I mean, if he spent that much time watching that many episodes versus just doing the work, putting into the business, he would be in a totally different situation. So I think that's foundational. But
Amen.
you'd ask like kind of what drives me, what makes me me. I'm disciplined. I put in the work, but I think there's an additional, metric here, which is really twofold. It's this insatiable desire to learn and to be better. So my kids always joke around. They have never once in their life, literally one time, got in the car with me and heard me listen to the radio because I'm
Wow.
constantly listening to podcast or education. I'm always buying courses and like this the SBA thing that we met with. I'm not an SBA underwriter, but I wanted to go through and get credentialed as an SBA underwriter just so I could learn better. So I'm constantly learning and becoming better, and that leads to when there's that combination of putting in the work and always learning and doing better, you implement the things that you're learning. And then there's also, I think, of this, and I don't know what it comes from. It's not lack of confidence, but it's not arrogance. There's somewhere in between, which is this kind of mentality that you could always be better. You're never finished. But you're not arrogant about it, but you're also not self-conscious and, not confident in who you are. But there's this constant need to learn more and become better. Just I don't know why. It's just maybe how I'm wired, but I'm always looking to put in the work, learn more, implement it, do better, and there's just this cycle of continuing to get better and more efficient and more effective.
I love that. I take after you in that way. That I just keep learning and I keep growing, and every time I learn, I might not implement that right away, but at some like 2 years later, I'm like, oh, I know how to do this now, right? Like, and so I think that's the real secret is that that's not, you have to have that be wired a little bit. Like not everybody can be disciplined like a Trent and a Zuber, right? But if you can build a little bit more discipline in your life, your life actually becomes easier. Like I wake up, I go to the gym. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know at Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be on Michael Zuber's podcast, right? And I just do that, right? Like these same things over and over again. My goal or for business ownership coach is to help 1 million aspiring entrepreneurs become successful business owners. Obviously, it's not me working one-on-one, but podcasting, all this stuff. And we have over 2 million, 2.5 million views on YouTube. We have We've done events on Eventbrite for 6 years. We've had 30,000 people register for events. So we're getting there where we're going to help
Yeah.
that many people, because the more people I can help, you can help, it's going to grow us. But I think that's really the underlying component, is that you have to do the work, and there's no secret pill to it. It's just I'm here on a Saturday. You're here on a Saturday because you want to give back and help out and learn some new things. Zuber's here on a Saturday. Zuber, what are your thoughts on what Trent said?
I think I want to bring this back again to the audience. And I think that Trent's in a very unique position to help people, because I think Cody Sanchez, Alex Hermosi, Gary V, all to different levels, are really preaching an interesting idea, i.e., there's a bunch of baby boomers who own a bunch of businesses who are probably not leveraging tech, certainly not leveraging AI. And that just screams opportunity. I also think that college is becoming a non-starter for more and more people, whether that means going directly to the trades, which is awesome, which again can be a franchise. But I think where Trent sits is at a very interesting apex, because if you can filter in, qualified buyers, I'd love to figure out what excites him about a buyer. Again, a 1 to 100 ratio is terrible, right? One good buyer
Mhm.
out of 100 is terrible. So tell us what makes a good buyer. But I'm just curious first, Trent, do you see this opportunity as clearly as Cody, Alex, and Gary make it out, that a bunch of baby boomers just want to sell their businesses for nothing and retire? Or is that a real thing?
So it's interesting because you asked the question, do I see the opportunity? Absolutely, 100%. Now, in real life, because I'm actually doing the transactions, it's significantly harder than they make it sound.
No,
But
you're
the
kidding me,
opportunity,
Trent. It's harder
but
than they make it sound. Come on.
but the opportunity is there. But the idea that you're going to walk into a business, put no money down, have the seller finance 100%, and you're going to buy this business that you can sit back and just make a bunch of money is, I think, probably overstated significantly. Now, can you walk into a business and get creative on the financing? Yeah, but I think it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take you putting in, from a buyer standpoint, putting in the systems, the processes, the procedures to eventually build yourself out or work yourself out of running that day to day. But you're not buying a business absentee from day one. I rarely see that happen. But I will answer part of his other question. He asked, what do I get excited about when I see a buyer that's qualified? So I'll tell you, here's the easiest way to start. I'll start off what I do not like. And then we'll talk about what I do like. But sometimes I'll get these buyers that listen to some of these online gurus that talk about it, make it sound so easy. And the whole pitch they're making is buy a profitable cash flow absentee business. And that's it for the most part. And the
Hmm.
premise generally is fantastic. But the problem is when I get buyers who call me up and say, I'm looking for a business and I'm industry agnostic. That's the phrase, that's the terminology that they're learning. When I,
Oh, you
when,
know what
when,
that is in real estate? I
yeah,
have a similar gripe. In real estate is I'll buy any good deal. I
yeah,
just want a good deal.
exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
come on, dude.
Yeah,
How do you know?
exactly. I'm like, you
Yeah.
you have not thought through what your criteria is to really narrow it down. But not only that, there's what we I referenced this earlier, there's the buy box. And all of these online gurus are talking about the buy box. Buy a business that's whatever, I'm just making it up, 20 years old, has 10 employees, has margins of 20% or greater, owner wants to retire. And that's the buy box. And fantastic. I love that. That works great. Here's the problem. Just because someone you found a business that fits that buy box doesn't mean that you as the buyer fit that buy box. And
Yes.
and that's so important because, and I'll give you a perfect example. Literally just yesterday, I was on the phone with my one of my buyers and my lender who found a business that fits the generic online buy box. And the very first question out of the lender's mouth was, okay, Mr. IT guy, that was his background, looking at
Hmm.
buying a landscaping business. Reoccurring revenue, fantastic. How do you, Mr. IT guy, have the experience, have transferable skills to be able to operate this business and make sure that the bank's going to get paid back? So the business was fantastic, but the buyer individually was not fantastic. Not because he wasn't generally good. He had good credit. He had good cash flow. He got good income. He had, the collateral that he needs. He's got his down payment. But that experience gap, lenders are getting more and more picky on that because
As they
they,
should.
yeah, they should, right? Why does the lender, is he going to have any confidence that this IT guy that's never picked up a
A
lawnmower, a
shovel. Doesn't have
shovel in his
calluses on his
life?
hands. Yeah.
Yeah, is he the right guy? And
Yeah.
it's not to say that he can't be, but how do we give assurance to the lender? So what we had to do, literally, the lender said, "Look, the deal works, you work. The combination of the two don't work unless we get someone either in here that's a
Yeah.
partner,
Bring a
or
partner.
what we offered was a 2% equity stake to the manager that he will stay on long term and that he's going to now be a
Interesting.
partner in the business to
There you
make
go.
up for that lack of experience." So to answer your
So
question,
no,
Zuber,
I
yeah,
love that. I
yeah,
love that answer. But so again, I know there's so, Alex, Cody, Gary, they do a great job of exciting the masses, which is awesome. But also, as you've just highlighted, they're kind of unqualified, right, to say the least. That's why I think one of the things that Bo does for his area, right, these little surveys, because I think you have to have a better chance of marrying your skill set, your experience with the opportunity. Or to your point, you're going to give up some equity, which is not a bad outcome, right? It's not a horrible outcome to give up 2% or 5% for an operator.
yeah. Especially if
Um,
the deal didn't work to begin with.
yeah,
What I was going to say is that's why sometimes I think franchises make sense because it's like training wheels. You get a coach, you get all this. Now, granted, you have a relationship, you're paying royalties ongoing but I think for people that are transitioning, sometimes if they don't have the skill sets, a franchise makes a lot of sense. A franchise makes sense in different ways. Not always. And that's why I tell people that come to me because we do some franchise consulting is look at business acquisition, mom and pop, resales, startups, and really start getting to see what would be a good fit for you because a franchise at least has the training wheels and infrastructure to take somebody who's never worked in home service because they can do it, but you still have to have the underlying you have to really be coachable and you got to be able to like just learn things and go, right? Like if you can't do that, you shouldn't
Yeah,
own.
I think the key that you're pointing out is if you don't have the experience, one, it's not smart to get into a business that you have no idea in just because it's a good
amen.
business. But
Yeah,
you either are giving up some equity or you're giving up some royalty cost, margin on the operating business to pay the franchise. Someone has to bridge that gap of
correct.
experience.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something else before I cut you off?
No, again, I'm trying to bring it back to the audience, right? We've got 100 people or more watching this live, and we're going to have thousands more watch the replay. Lots of them are probably interested in buying a business, whether it be an existing business or a franchise. So I guess my first question here, Trent, is what makes a good buyer, right? To your point, to your earlier point,
Hmm.
right? Hundreds of people come to you, and it's really a waste of time. That filtering process is bad. What are something? Is it having a buy box? Is it having a buy box that ties to experience? What are the traits that, like, when you're on the phone or email with someone, you're like, oh, this guy's better than average as a buyer?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I think are really relevant here. It's in fact I ask excuse me, a couple questions to sellers before, or I'm sorry, to buyers before they actually want to meet the seller, just to get a general sense. How are they going to pay for the business? Most of them don't have cash. No one expects them to have cash. It's nice when we find someone who does, but most of the time that's not the case. But they need to have some type of proof of funds, whether that's a significant down payment and they're going to try and get some seller financing, whether that's a pre-approval from an SBA lender, that I know there's some sort of a roadmap here for them to get across the finish line from a capital standpoint. As the audience reaches out to business brokers, that's one of the first things a business broker is going to ask is proof of funds.
Yep.
What does their situation look like? And that's assuming, all the five C's of cash and collateral and character, all that. That's just kind of fall under that same category. But I also ask, we talked about experience. I wanted to get I want to get their background, their experience. But here's something that we haven't talked about that I think is really relevant, which is how close do they live to the business? This is another kind of pet peeve I
Mm,
get when I get buyers who I've got, for example, a fantastic surgical center for sale in Las Vegas, nets $1 million a year, and I get buyers out of, I'm just making it up, out of, Florida. They're like, hey, this business makes a lot of money. I'm interested. I'm great. Are you a surgeon? What happens, what happens when someone needs to be down here to actually step in and
Yeah.
solve a problem? Someone from another part of the country, even honestly, I'm not even that big of a fan of a neighboring state. I mean, it's not hard, it's not easy to get to even a neighboring state if you've got a day-to-day business where you don't have your pulse on the day-to-day operation because you're not local. And so what ends up happening is by the time the out-of-state owner finds out about it, it's an all-out emergency
Oh yeah,
rather
it's
than
too late.
someone who's a
Yeah.
little bit local that's a problem. And you can solve and fix problems and make pivots. And so I'm always looking for making sure that the buyer's got the right experience, the right capital, however that is, SBA financing, and do they live somewhat local? Now, not every business, if they're buying an e-commerce business, then it doesn't matter. But there's so many businesses that are
Yeah. I
local
agree.
driven, and it's just, I mean, you can get away with that for real estate. But
Sure.
think about the risk someone is taking. If they go to the SBA and get financing, they're personally guaranteeing it. They're putting their house as
Hmm.
collateral, and
Yep.
then they're hoping that the manager who makes whatever 70 grand a year is so good that they risk their entire family finance foundation on some manager who has no equity in the business is going to continue to run the business versus them actually being somewhat local. And that's not to say that they have to be in the business every day, all day long, but
Hmm.
it makes a big difference to start off being an owner operator and then kind of phase yourself out because now you know the culture, now you know the customers, now you know the vendors, now you
Yes.
know the employees, now you know the KPIs to watch and monitor so that problems don't become emergencies by the time the owner finds out about it.
So let me ask you this question. I'll throw it back to Bo. So let's assume you've been spun up by Cody, Alex, or Gary, one or all of them. What do you recommend somebody do next? Right? Is there a book? Is there, I mean, how does somebody go from this, I'm vibrating with excitement to being a qualified buyer? Because there's obviously a big gap there. You don't just go from excitement to buying. Where do they go? Where do they go to learn some stuff?
You want to answer that? You want me to answer that?
Uh, well, I mean, Trent put, I think, over 30 hours of video lecture in
Yeah,
his school group.
talk about it.
And so, because Trent doesn't have a buyer problem, meaning he gets 1,000 messages a day. Hey, Trent,
He has
I'm
a
looking.
qualified buyer problem, maybe.
Here's my buy box, Trent. I'm ready to go. Trent gets a million of those messages a day, so
Good for him.
he knows how fragmented this industry is, and that he'd love to help as many buyers as he can. So he created the school committee. He's got 30 plus hours. So I would go through that. He doesn't charge you for that. Obviously, he makes money if he works with you as a buy side, but he doesn't have time to do buy side advisory unless you find the business. Okay, then him and his
Yeah,
team,
that's a good point.
right? So it's like this is the only way he could really help a buyer per se. Is here's the education you need. Then once you understand how to come back and be a ready, willing, and able buyer that shows yourself well, you just know who's ready and who's not. Like when I do an
Mm.
SBA loan and I have a sophisticated buyer, their packages, I don't have to do anything on their loan package. It's already, they upload and I'm like, oh, this is easy. Let me call this will go to this bank and it's like simple, right? Versus, hey, I've never bought a business. I've got, a bunch of lates on my credit. I have all these obstacles to overcome. I don't, when an underwriter in Omaha at this bank is going to look at my resume, does it show transferable experience? Does it like these are things you need to learn, and then you're ready to buy. Just like I helped Brandon buy a $10 million business that cash flows $4 million a year
Mm.
via financing. Like he was already ready. I just was the guy that got the deal done for him as far as the loan, right? But 29 years old, 4 million, like that's what I call a grand slam deal. You don't
Hmm.
see a lot of those, but he was a grand slam buyer, if that makes sense.
Mm.
He was toned. He was doing his daily with discipline. He knew what he was doing. although he had never made a big acquisition like that. So how do you put yourself in that position? Like if you're buying your first rental property, right? How do you put yourself in the first position? I think that's all the key stuff that we really have to look at. So go through Trent's courses. Maybe you could probably post in the group like questions you might have. Listen to my YouTube channel on SBA financing. Get my book, How to Get SBA Financing to Buy Your First Business. Actually, Bill, I'll give everybody the video course I did for free. If I don't know, we'll figure out how to do it. Anybody who registered for this event, or maybe that's on live right now, to give them a bonus. But just go through that, and then that's going to move the needle. Just like Trent was talking about earlier, he's not, he does, for him, and like me, I like to learn. Like if people ask me like, hey, what do you want to do? Like I like to go on vacation where it's like a learning event, and then I go out to dinners and do that kind of stuff. To me, that's like a great vacation. Of course, I go swimming, I do the beach, I go eat tacos, but I always try to learn something new every day. And there's like unlimited amount of stuff you can learn. But there's also the point where you learn too much and you never take freaking action. So just don't be that person either.
Yeah, and that school community, as you mentioned, is totally free, and I walk them through how to analyze. There's deal analyzer calculators in there. They can plug in the numbers. There's calculators that help them determine what the right buy size is, the size of the transaction based on their available funds and their background and their credit. And so it can really help narrow down where they should be shopping, what size, what industry. And then once they find a deal, they can run the numbers, analyze it. And then at that point, once they have a deal, if they ever want help, they can always reach out to me and I can help them at that point. I just can't help them actually find the business that they've got to find on their own.
So let me ask just one clarifying question, because again, I see just in my world, and it's like I have like 1% overlap with what you guys are doing in the business world. How much time would you recommend somebody spend to go from that? Cody's got me so excited to, I'm going to reach out to you, Trent, and have a meaningful conversation. Should somebody think that's a 10-hour exercise, 40? Is it the classic 2,000 hours? I mean, how much? I mean, just to give somebody a level set of how much energy it takes to go from buzzing excitement to meaningful phone call. Is it hundreds of hours? What are we thinking?
Bo, you chime in here because I've never thought about that. That's a really great question. My initial thought is, and I hate to give this answer, is it depends. It depends on their background. If they're coming from absolutely no management, administrative, business ownership experience, it's one thing to get excited to buy a business, but that's just, and I, in fact, I had just a social media post on this, I think it was yesterday. I see all these first-time buyers celebrating their first acquisition like they made it to the end. And great, that is a lot of work. And
welcome to day one.
Exactly. That is just the ticket to get in. You just put your foot through the door, and that's just the starting point. And so it's one thing to get excited and to say, hey, I like this, buying a business that's established, profitable. I like that concept, but it's a whole nother thing to properly operate and keep that profit margin, sustain the lifestyle that you're looking for, service the debt. And so it's a hard question to answer because I don't know what the individual
So let me give you a
is.
little bit more, right? So when I look at, because again, I call them shooting stars. They're just vibrating so much. They're so excited. But if we don't focus them, that energy goes away and they're gone. So what I would tell somebody new, I was like, hey, I would ask what I call dumb questions. For example, can you read a financial statement? Shoot, I might ask, can you tell me what an income statement, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement are?
Yeah,
right?
What's the difference between cash and accrual? I mean,
yeah, exactly. There's got to be some basic stuff, right? Because if you don't understand some of the basics, how can you read a proposal, right? I mean, what do you know you're buying? Are you getting accounts receivable? What's collections look like? All of these different things. And so there's the financial operation, but then there's also customer acquisition, addressable market. What's it cost to get a customer? What percent of my revenue is from the top 10 customers, right? There's all of these aspects. How do we frame somebody? Because maybe you're like me and you're an MBA and an accountant. So you got the financial statements wired. but you couldn't market yourself out of a paper bag, right? How do you find out where you're weak and where you're strong?
You want to answer that?
Well, I was just thinking like, well,
Sorry.
one thing is you aren't really a marketer, but like, I'll just go back. It's like you are kind of a marketer because you have 15,000 videos on your YouTube channel.
No, no, this wasn't about me. I was trying to be
Oh,
generic for the
okay.
audience.
But yeah. But yeah, but you weren't a marketer, but you became
No.
one. Became a pretty darn good marketer. So
Fair,
even though,
fair enough.
so that goes to show you anything could be learned, right?
Sure.
I mean, I definitely don't have aptitude like a CPA does as far as like spreadsheets and so forth. Tax strategy, I get that, right? I get, okay, this is how it's done. I would never be the guy plugging in the numbers on the tax returns. So I think if you can learn all these things and the team members you need to make sure that you're doing certain things, like, Branson, what's Virgin Air guy?
Richard Branson.
Richard
Branson.
Branson. That guy can't read anything. Like the dude, I watched the podcast. He's like, but he knew to get the right people around him. So I think there's a combination. At the end of the day, you need to know how things operate and work. You might not be the person that's doing the tax returns or, doing the controlling of the business, but you darn well better know how all those things work together in order to do that. So if I'm hearing everybody correctly today, I think like there is a plan. If we, step one is whether it's Trent's group or another group, go through, Trent obviously has the tools and stuff. Just go through his stuff, go through his course, engage in it, use the tools, start understanding this, start understanding the buyer box, not the buy box in the business acquisition.
Yeah,
Trent,
that's a good
Trent
one.
says,
That's a good one.
I got it from Trent, so I can't take credit for that. And understanding your buyer box and like what businesses would be realistic for you, and then make sure it's something within an hour drive, if not closer, because even if it has a GM in place and all these things, guarantee once you take that business over, it's not going to perform the same way it did for the seller. Because it's what did the seller do? The seller engaged a really good business broker that helped them get the business ready for sale, and they spent 3 or 4, in a perfect world, they spent 2 or 3 years getting that business pristine, right? And so to think that you can take it over, and because you're an MBA and you're a private equity guy, you could just make this HVAC business do well. That's why right now, when Trent said earlier, banks are getting tougher. A lot of it is these searchers that had no. They're smart, way smarter than I am on paper, but they don't know how to talk to a blue collar person.
They drove up the SBA default rates.
Yeah, they drove.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yes. So we're seeing that right now. I think the proof is in the pudding. People in real estate, like in syndication world, they all came over into like business acquisition. Not all of them, some of them, right? They're like, oh, it's tough to make money in syndication, raising money and buying these large apartment buildings. A lot of them are like, hey, well, let me go buy an HVAC business because they're sexy and like, but the prices have been driven up. Mm-hmm. And if you think you're going to buy an HVAC business 5 states over and hire a GM, now some of them are kind of catching on and they're giving equity to the right people, but a lot of times the revenue declines when you take over a business. Do you see that often, Trent, out of curiosity?
Yeah, it does. To your point, you'd said it. The business is never going to operate exactly the way it did for the previous owner. So, but I do want to go back because Zubar had asked a question that I think would be helpful, at least the way I approach it as far as education and kind of self-assessment, where you're at. As you know, we've talked about this. I'm a huge proponent of AI. I use a lot of systems, technology, processes, and AI coupled with AI. And I think far too many people use AI as like a glorified Google. They're just typing in a few questions and getting some kind of generic feedback. I see far fewer people use it as a self-assessment tool. And so I ask AI to interview me on certain topics all the time and then poke holes. Where am I strong and where am I weak? And then I ask AI to put a plan together to strengthen my weaknesses. So to Zubar's point, if someone's wanting to get in business, but they might know financials, but they don't know marketing or they don't know operations, AI can help identify that and put a plan together and then make recommendations for the books and the education to go out there and turn those areas of weaknesses into a little bit stronger area by using it to do a little self-assessment.
Trent, I don't mean to put work on you, and you could feel free to tell me to F off if you want to. But I'm curious, have you saved or might you create prompts for that kind of self-assessment? Maybe take an example, because it sounds like you've done this before. Maybe there's a series of 10 questions to go
Mm,
deeper and
I
deeper.
have, yeah, we could spend a whole another hour podcast on this. I have hundreds of prompts
I
that
think
I
if we
have saved.
gave like somebody the top 20 self-assessment prompts, I think that would because a lot of people, at least, my age, Gen X, baby boomers, were apprehensive, I think is a fair way to say about, because we let's be clear. Even I use AI as more of a sophisticated Google search. You're
Hmm.
absolutely right. You know, but if somebody were to give me 10 or 20 prompts and I went through that as an exercise, I'm sure I could then get the next 20. But we need help from a trusted advisor like
Yeah,
you to start us.
so here's the thing. Well, in fact, there's a couple talking points here. I did read something just the other week that the average prompt put into AI right now is 9 words. That is the equivalent of garbage in,
It's a
garbage
Google
out.
search. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's why sometimes people put in AI and they're like, this doesn't sound like me, or this isn't great. It's probably because the input wasn't great, so they can't expect the output to be fantastic either. But
Fair enough.
to your point, here's what I love about AI. If I were to go and buy, some whatever piece of equipment at IKEA, piece of furniture at IKEA, and I get these really poorly done instructions, I'm stuck. I can't do anything with that when I'm
Yeah.
confused. But AI is the instruction that you can ask to better explain its own instruction. And so that's how I've learned how to do a lot of my prompts is I'll put in my initial best thought on what a prompt is, but I'm not asking for output. I'm asking AI to tell me what did I do well in this prompt and where am I lacking? How could I make this prompt better? And that way you're using AI as an instructor. I'm not interested in the output in this instance. I'm interested in it teaching me. And I
Mm,
think rather than just, and I'm happy to give out some prompts that may be relevant, but I think it's so much more valuable to teach people how to develop their own prompts because one, they're going to then customize it to their needs, but then they
yeah.
learn how to do it for proper future
I
prompting.
think we need samples, man. We need samples because
Yeah.
again, um, you know, what you just said, I have no doubt is true. But for most of us, including myself, it's in one ear and out the other. I have no idea what the hell you just said. I mean, I
Yes.
understand the words,
Yeah.
but I don't understand the context of those words, if that
Yeah.
makes
So,
sense.
sometimes I like when I'm asking Zuber because I do all this marketing and he doesn't do any really, and I'm like,
No,
do Zuber, do a newsletter. You got such a big audience, and it's like so easy, And he anyway. So yeah, the so a guy like Zuber really needs to kind of. I mean, he doesn't need to do whatever, but like I think if he embraced it, because he was talking about doing a new book and like how he could prompt ideas for his book. I was trying to give him like that, like kind of thing. Don't let it write your whole book, but let it help you outline, architect things. And once you did that, you'd be like, oh, like he doesn't understand the power yet. And I want him to because it's like once you do, you're like, oh my God, this is. It was like when when I had a BlackBerry and I liked the BlackBerry because the keyboard, and I wouldn't get an iPhone. I'm like, I'm
yeah.
not gonna get an iPhone. Then you get an iPhone and you're like, oh no, why didn't I want that
What's a
BlackBerry?
BlackBerry? It's a rock. All
100%.
right. Well, I'm going to ask Trent explicitly to give me the top 5 prompts he saved, and I'm going to drop them into my own and see what kind of mysteries I can solve in myself.
You guys could do that on a episode of your
Absolutely. I'm
get
happy
them
to
on
have him.
one rental at a time and
He,
do a whole thing on prompting and
absolutely. If
right,
he's
yeah,
down, I'm down.
yeah. I mean,
Reach out. I'd be happy to.
it's pretty. I'll connect you guys via text. Make sure you
So,
program my
so
Yeah.
name and your.
we're getting to the close of Trent's time here, but I do want to address a couple questions in the audience.
Mhm.
Both of the questions in the queue right now are from Malandi. Her first question is, how should you approach business ideas that are not necessarily in your area of expertise, but have identified the public need, especially if it's an untapped area that has very little competition at the moment? That's number one. The second one's a
That's
little
almost more of
different.
a that's almost more of a startup business rather
Yeah.
than acquisition. So that's almost a whole separate topic of proving the concept before you go in too deep.
Yeah, yeah, agree. Her second question is, are there key points when venturing into a business that is a checklist to know when you are ready to invest into it? I'm currently taking business courses to start learning methods. However, experience is a more in-depth understanding.
Yeah, I think you got to figure out how you learn best. Like I learn best by asking questions in person or on Zooms. Like I don't learn by necessarily textbooks. Like I'll prefer learning on like a podcast. So figure out how you learn best. But I think like it's not a bad thing to find a mentor and kind of intern in the beginning because I think that's the fastest way you can learn. But figure out how you can learn. I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly, but I don't think there's like a prescription on exactly how everyone will learn because we all learn differently. So figure out how you best learn and absorb information. I need to like do it and like really understand it. I could have people show it to me. Just the way I learn is just maybe different than the way you learn. But I think there's no better learning than like getting in the right rooms, learning from people that have that experience and asking them questions.
Yeah, get him with a coach or a mentor.
That's the answer to me. And I made that mistake. I thought the answer lived in Excel and on the internet 20 years ago. And it wasn't until I got in the right rooms around other people really doing it. That's why Trent School Community is probably the right place to go because it ties book smarts with, real life. And that's where the magic happens.
Well, very good. Keep on asking questions, guys. We'll get to them in the chat. Trent's going to stay for a little bit of the next conversation with Ari. And Ari is another. Were you born in? You weren't born in Las Vegas. We're all Las Vegans.
I am a Las Vegan since 2011, but I'm from Denver originally. So people get confused because they see the Red Rock and they just assume that it's a Denver thing, which it is, but it's also a Las Vegas thing. So it kind of has dual,
Yeah, that's cool. So Michael Zuber lives here 52% of the time. Trent's Trent's born and raised. Ari Trent is the #1 business broker in the world, in the nation. And he's here in Las Vegas. And actually, when I was driving here to the studio, I was like, God, my brain started really working. And I was like, because I do the franchise, we call ourselves consultants, franchise consultants. It's like, I see a big, I guess, blue ocean of resales that are going to happen, some performing, some not performing. And I was like, man, maybe I should get mentored by Trent because I know the consulting part, but I don't really know the business brokerage side. Because what if I listed all those resales? I think there's a huge opportunity. Trent, will you mentor me?
I will, but what we should do is team up and just get them on the market and put them through my system that can move a lot of those.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. And I hate to do it on a webinar, but that's a great idea. So I think a lot of the story is, did you see how I did that? I already knew I was going to ask Trent that, and he didn't know that question was going to come. But you're right. I don't want to do what Trent does because he's so much, he understands business valuation, all that. So maybe there's a partnership, right? Like, so that's another example about getting in the right rooms, right? Like there's an opportunity that just created for me where I could get one of the best business brokers in the world. I could use my marketing skills to get all these resales, and we just became the #1 franchise resale brokerage in the nation. That is sweet. God darn it. I like that. Well, Ari, now we're going to talk about Red Rock franchise development. So Ari is local here. And when you're a franchise consultant like I am, we're members of different associations. For example, I'm FBA. And Ari markets 8. How many brands is it now? 8, 10, 12?
We have 8. Yep.
8 brands.
Yep.
And she helps, like if I have a candidate I'm working with and one of her brands, I do a territory check. I see it's available. And then Ari helps grow those franchises. So she's worked with a lot of emerging brands and helped them become bigger brands, like from 0 to 150 units. So I wanted to bring Ari on because she's a wealth of information. She's been in the franchise industry longer than I have. She does a fantastic conference here in Las Vegas every year, and she does a mastermind, which I always attend. And I wanted Ari to talk about some of her brands, maybe even give people perspective, because we had Trent talking about, buying a business acquisition, not necessarily a franchise, but we could give them perspective of investing into a franchise startup with coaching and tools and all that good stuff. So go ahead, Ari. I don't know
Well,
what.
thanks for having me. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity and nice to meet all of you guys and the attendees as well. I guess I'll kind of just give a kind of brief overview as to what we do at Red Rock Franchise Development, and then I can run through the brands and cover anything from franchise consulting. I know Bo is also a wealth of knowledge in this space as well. But at Red Rock Franchise Development, like Bo said, we are a kind of a boutique. We're really kind of niche in that we are a franchise development organization. So we help either emerging or established brands grow their system through either organic interest, organic leads, or leads that are coming from the broker consultant community. We basically work as an extension of that brand's team on the development side. So we have a whole team over here at Red Rock. There's 4 of us. And we focus on sales, but we also focus on development. So we're not just a sales organization where we're pushing deals through deal after deal after deal. Like, we really spent time vetting the candidate, making sure they're the right fit for the brand, making sure that everything makes sense for them financially. As well as we are very integrated in the broker community. So we train a lot of consultants. We do, as Bo said, masterminds. We just play a really great kind of middleman role in terms of everything that has to do with franchising. Myself and my husband, Jason, we started Red Rock Franchise Development. We come from a franchise background, so we're going into our 3rd year with this business, but we were franchise brokers. We were brokers going back to 2012, I believe, maybe even earlier than that. But we also have been franchisees. My husband was the CEO of a biohazard franchise system for 4.5 years. And so we've done a lot on the franchise side. We've trained a lot of brokers and we've just been part of the community. So we felt like this was a unique opportunity to offer something to the franchise world that was a little bit different. So with that being said, we have 8 brands. We do not stay in one specific industry, but we only take one brand in that specific space. We don't want our brands competing against each other. So we love home services. We love pets. We love senior care. We love all the things. So Bo, do you want me to just list off the brands and talk a little bit about each one, or?
Yeah, let's start with Up Closet. I think that'd be an interesting, and talk about the candidates. There's a lot of younger generation that are crushing it in that business. That'd be a fun one to start, if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely. So Home Run Franchises is a system that was created by a gentleman named Thomas Scott. He is based in Nashville, Tennessee. He is a career entrepreneur. He owned a marketing company. He also has been in franchising. He's a wealth of knowledge. He was actually our very first client over at Red Rock. And so he really took a chance on us, and we've been wildly successful with that system, as well as the sister brand, which is Dryer Vent Superheroes. Up Closet, we're at about 110 locations with maybe 94, 95 owners. Most of our owners have multi-locations. It's a custom solution brand. We do have a lot of different owner backgrounds when it comes to that system. So we do have, like Bo said, a younger owner. One of our top performing locations is like 25. He bought this brand with his mom and dad, but he runs it. He has a little bit of a real estate background. And he's been great. We talk a lot about generational selling because that buyer is going to be very different from somebody that's 55 or 60 coming out of a 10 or 12-year corporate job. We're seeing a lot of layoffs right now. And so people are navigating towards business ownership. They don't necessarily want to go back into a job. They don't want to have a boss or a paycheck. They want to have their own kind of figure out their own destiny in terms of what are they going to do. They're not quite ready to retire, but they don't want to go back to a job. So we really talk about like, how do you structure the sales process and the conversation from talking to somebody that's 55 or 60 to talking to somebody that's 25. And, they rely a lot on automation. And so that's something that Thomas has been really good at, is automating what they do in terms of their customer. So how do they find the right customer? How do they market to the right customer? How do they make it known that this is our average ticket? We're not IKEA, but we're also not California Closets. So we do things a little bit different in terms of going to market. All of the manufacturing is done by direct to mill manufacturers. So when if you're local here in Vegas, you go to downtown Summerlin, you see a brick and mortar California Closets. That's not the model. Like, our franchisees are not required to have a storefront. They're not required to have a warehouse. Everything gets shipped to them. And everything is done through a CAD software, through an AI generated software where they can enter the dimensions and in real time see what that space might look like while working with the customer. So it's not old school. They don't draw the design out on graph paper. It doesn't take 2 weeks to return the design. It's immediate and it's quick and it's effective, and people love that.
So just to reiterate, it's a home-based business model. And you guys can you explain Up Closets what the service is? It's all closets? Is it bedrooms? Like, give that description so they get an idea of what the business model is a little bit clearer.
So even though it says closet in the name, it's custom solutions. So it's closets, pantries, mudrooms, garage systems, Murphy beds. We can do walk-in systems and reach-in systems. So the software will recognize the difference between a walk-in system and a reach-in system. But yes, it's a full line. What we don't do, and we get people asking, do you do cabinets? Do you do bathrooms? And we don't right now. That is something that is going to be on the horizon.
So when a candidate comes into the system and they like Up Closets, for example, they go through, can you walk everybody out there like what the process is? Let's just say I was working with the candidate. I introduced them because I thought Up Closet was a good brand. Take them from that standpoint, from the Fran Dev side, on how they could learn about the business models and ultimately, talk them through validation, like how they really get all the numbers, because there's only certain things can be disclosed. Can you kind of give them the flavor of that?
Yeah, so they come into our pipeline at Red Rock. We handle the initial reach out and conversation. So we do typically schedule a 30 or 40-minute introduction. It's a high-level overview on the brand, kind of some of the things that I just shared with everybody, just kind of, from a day-to-day perspective. And we also run through the process. Once they decide that this is the right possible opportunity in terms of wanting to go through our process, right? They're still doing their due diligence. We typically send out an FDD, which is a franchise disclosure document. I don't know how deep you guys have gotten on that, but all franchise systems are required by law to have an FDD. We're regulated by the FTC. So every year we renew our FDD. Our new one just came out about 2 months ago, so it's fresh off the press. It's 2025's data. We always talk about, kind of being able to identify the initial investment based on the territory size and the ongoing royalties, which are item 6, item 7, as well as some revenue numbers from existing locations that have been in business for at least a year are disclosed in that item 19. Obviously, they're going to want to talk to franchisees and validate some of those numbers. But it's a long document, right? It's a couple hundred pages. It's written by an attorney. There's a lot of information about us as a franchise system, about Thomas, but there's also a lot of boilerplate FTC information that we're required by law to include. And we send it over via DocuSign because we have to collect that receipt so that we know the day that we sent it, so we can put that in our file, whether the candidate decides to come on board with us or not. We host a marketing technology demo every other week with our corporate team, where we will do a full kind of marketing overview I cover marketing on that initial kind of conversation, but we dive into marketing with our brand manager, who is also our CMO, who is also Thomas's daughter, his favorite child. He will say he has 6 kids, and all of his kids are active in our systems. And what we do is we show the candidate the technology. We're not gatekeeping what that looks like. We want them to see a demo of that CAD software so they can see how we navigate through building a system for a customer and what that interaction looks like in terms of, here's the dimensions, click and drag. So that's a group call. We do it via Zoom because we want people to ask questions. We want them to interact with our team. We want to see how they kind of take in the information. We also offer a CEO call, which is a one-on-one call with Thomas. And then we send them into validation, where we introduce them to franchisees that are in different parts of the US, that are at different points in their business, that are different ages, different backgrounds. Sometimes we have families that are franchisees. Sometimes we have partners, business partners. So we want them to talk to people, that we want them to validate certain aspects of the business. And then we come back and we review any questions that they have about the FDD, about the business. We will map out, typically on that CEO call, we'll map out some territory. We'll look at the population, all those different aspects. And then it's kind of decision day at that point. And we do want them to come to Nashville for a week of in-person training. We host every other month an in-person training in Nashville because we alternate with the Dryer Event brand. And we do 30 to 45 days of virtual onboarding with them before they come out to Nashville. So we can cover a lot of, classroom type of things, some homework. So if they're still navigating some other, maybe a job or another business or something like that, they can still start their onboarding and then come to Nashville for a week of in-person training.
So, thank you. So just to give you an idea, what's the investment range on this particular business model?
So we're depending on the territory size. We offer a small and a medium-sized territory based on population. We also look at income level. We look at people that own as opposed to rent. People that rent aren't typically putting in a custom solution. For a small territory, we're at about 4 to 450,000 in population, and a medium is about $1 million to $1.2 million. We say that we want you to be somewhere around 150 to 200,000 all in. That's going to include franchise fee. That's going to include an opening marketing tech stack, where we launch the first 30 days of what we call conversational marketing through a Meta Business account. There's going to be some miscellaneous items, tools, equipment, a down payment on a large cargo van, which is our spec, as well as about 3 to 4 months of working capital. So that we have some nice SBA partners that will help the candidate. On the low end, the loan package starts at about 150, and they can take out 150 to 250, just depending on how much working capital they want. But we have people that leverage a HELOC. They can do a 401k rollover. There's unsecured lines of credit. SBA has some obviously specific requirements in terms of eligibility.
Yeah. So if you do SBA on that program, just take $150,000 total project cost, 90% financing, you're putting 15, 16 grand down. So these home-based business models I like, because it's like, there's not a lot of overhead. Usually these types of business models, if done well and you're coachable, you can ramp up fairly quickly. And then through validation, when we're coaching people, we want to validate with them, but really coach them through the validation process. Say, hey, how long did it take you to get cash flow positive? Was it 3 months? Was it 5 months? Was it 6 months? This way, before you build, you want to know how much working capital you want to build in. I always tell people to build in more working capital because it doesn't hurt to build in more working capital. Zuber, do you have any questions on that first franchise or just franchising in general? Any questions that might be tickling?
Yeah, I mean, the question I came prepared for Ari today was, obviously she represents 8 brands today, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek question. Why doesn't she support 80 brands? And the answer probably is something like, she could if she wanted to, but she thinks these are the best 8 brands. So I'd love to know why these 8 brands made the cut and, the other 72 in my example didn't. Ari, what is it about these 8 brands that you put your name and energy behind?
So obviously there's hundreds, thousands of franchise systems out there. Some are great, some are maybe not so great. Because we're kind of a boutique offering in terms of the development services that we offer, and because we really want to stick with one brand per industry, we've partnered with, or industry space, I guess, rather, we have other home services brands. We really take time and energy to make sure that we vet those brands, that they align with the values that we have over here at Red Rock. So we're not just looking to pump people through the system without validating them, without making sure that they have everything that they need. We probably could build our internal team to 50 or 60 salespeople that are just out there bringing brands in and just, making franchisees, over and over and over, selling multi-territories. But that's just not the vision that Jason and I have in terms of this business. I think a sweet spot for us is somewhere between 10 and 12 brands total, as a long-term kind of goal for us. But eight seems to work with the team that we have right now. With that being said, are we looking for brands that don't compete with the brands that we have? Absolutely. We're always on the hunt for brands because people change and things happen and, brands evolve. And so hopefully that kind of answers your question.
No, absolutely. So if we were to switch it over and again think about the audience here,
Yeah.
What is a good conversation like? Because again, I think we've seen a lot of social media celebrities make the idea of owning and starting a business. They talk about it being a plan B. Even I've talked about it, a plan B, and all these layoffs, as you mentioned earlier. What makes a good first conversation versus a complete waste of time, which I'm sure happens as well.
As far as like the candidate is concerned, is
Yes.
that okay? So yes, like I think that I won't get too much on my soapbox because it does kind of get me all, hot and bothered when I hear about when somebody comes to me and says, I want a laundromat. I saw somebody on TikTok.
You saw Cody Sanchez say they were easy.
Yeah, I mean, they're easy and they're cheap and you don't have to do anything, right?
You just collect quarters.
Exactly. And it just, I have talked to laundromat owners that are like, this is really hard.
Yes.
And it's a lot of money and it's not passive. Nothing is passive. And I will tell you that from experience. Jason and I own some vending machines. We wanted another business. We decided to buy some vending machines. I won't name the company. They are reputable and they do a lot of business. But when we really dug into it and we were like, damn, this is hard. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of labor. It's not an hour a week. It's an hour drive time a week to service all these machines, to clean them, to make sure that they're stocked. It's important if you're going to enter into business ownership that you do your due diligence, that you do your homework, because while there are some amazing brands out there that can really change people's lives, and that's what I love about franchising is you're giving people an opportunity to work for themselves, to be their own boss, but getting in to the right system, making sure that you have enough money to sustain the business, because you're not going to make a ton of money. You're building the business, you're building all the infrastructure that it takes with any business. If somebody tells you it's easy, it's not. That's not the case. Is it rewarding? Can you make a lot of money? Absolutely. But it's what you put into it. So ask the right questions. Ask about the support. Ask about the values of the brand. Ask about, the successes of the brand. When somebody comes to me and says, I want to talk to the franchisees that have failed, I'm like, why? Do you want to fail? Why do you want to talk to somebody that's failed? Either they haven't followed the system or they didn't come with enough working capital. Like that
Right.
is really the big thing. There's so many things, but don't what I like to watch TikTok. I like to see what other people are doing, but don't watch TikTok and think that that is the answer to business ownership. Really do your due diligence and talk to as many people as possible, because I call that like it's a unicorn, right? Doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So
Yeah. So my last question, I'll throw it back to Bo. It's really thinking about the audience today. Again, lots of people, especially in my community, are W-2 employees. Many of them, probably like me, thought they would be a W-2 employee until they were 65 and they retired, in a sunset or with a pension. That's not proving accurate for everyone. And again, layoffs are up, at least in the tech industry. How does somebody go from being a W-2 employee with a boss and the perks of, they got, free snacks if you work at Google or Facebook or all this other stuff? You're kind of soft, to being an entrepreneur where it's, cutthroat and, all of that. How does somebody ease that gap? And I'm guessing franchise is the way to do that versus just buying an existing business because you've got a support system. But how do we increase the success rate of going from an employee to a franchise owner? Like, I'm sure lots of W-2 employees have
yeah.
worked with you on one of these 8. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. What are the traits of that employee that suddenly became an entrepreneur? What are the success factors?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and people ask me all the time, what's the biggest reason that somebody fails at a franchise?
Mhm.
Is they're not following the system. They're not following the model. You're not coming into something to recreate what somebody else is. This is typically a proven and successful model. And,
Mhm.
you have to look at that. Now, franchise systems want people that can not only follow a model and can, kind of go through all the things that are needed in order to launch the business successfully, but also they want people that have that spirit in terms of entrepreneurship, right? So to be able to go out, I mean, it's even though you have a franchisor that's supporting you from a corporate standpoint, that's helping guide you. So you're not like, okay, what do I do now? You still have to have the enough like go out and actually do it, right? You're still a business owner. It's still your business. It's your responsibility to launch it. They're not going to step into your market and they're not going to go out and build relationships, right? They're not going to make sure that your customers are taken care of. So sometimes a corporate like refugee is what we call them is a great candidate because they already know how to follow direction, right? They have a boss, they have to follow a specific script in terms of the day-to-day routine. um that's why we love younger buyers. Like, believe it or not, these kids that are coming out of college, these 24, 25 to maybe 32, 33, they listen to everything that the franchisor says and they do it. They're
Mm.
very motivated. They don't want to sit in a cubicle. They don't want to punch a clock. They want to go out and build their own kind of destiny. um Sometimes we struggle with people that are already business owners and they're coming in thinking that they want to buy a franchise. We hear the, well, why can't I just do this on my own? Well, you absolutely could. There's nothing stopping you from doing it on your own. So, that's a buyer that I struggle with a little bit because it's like, well, this is painting or flooring or whatever. It's like, well, it will take you 3 times longer, most likely, to get things off the ground than if you went with a franchise system and somebody showing you all the things that they could have already showed you. And I'll kind of close with this. When I get a candidate that is not following my process to get them through the due diligence, I have a very hard time seeing them as a business owner because
Mm.
they can't follow a simple process of CEO call, validation, DD review, mapping, all the things. Then I find it's going to be very hard for them to stay in a system and do all the things in order to launch their business successfully. So that is always a red flag to me, when they don't return calls or they don't show up to meetings or whatever the fact kind of is. So
I like it. Thank
hopefully,
you.
hopefully that kind of touches on some things.
Yeah, very helpful. Go ahead, Bo.
Yeah, I think we all everybody likes to sell the sizzle, right? Like, and everything is always sexy. And I think, today's conversation is really authentic. It's like, no matter what the business model is, there's a lot of work that's going to go from you to go from A to Z. Nothing is easy. You really have to spend time in the franchise world if you're looking at a franchise startup, is to really talk to a lot of the owners and really ask thoughtful questions. Think about the pain points of the business, because believe it or not, you could be in the best system in the world and there's still failure rates, right? There's still people that drop out, and that happens, and it's going to continue to happen. So even though it's a very established franchise, let's say, there's still, X amount of closures per year. So it really is on you to be coachable and to get to work with a coach and mentor that can get you to the right business model, whether it's a franchise or non-franchise or whatever it is. You really need the coaching and the thought process to go behind it, because that's just the reality. Just if you're like I go back to house flipping. When I used to house flip, I didn't flip. Out of all the houses I flipped, do you think I won on every house flip? No, I didn't. I didn't. I lost a few. I lost money on a few. Are there people out there that have hit 1,000%? Yeah, but that's a rarity. If you're in a house flipping world and the market changes, you could easily lose or break even on a deal. Like, I see it all day long when I used to fund those types of transactions. So I think a lot of this business ownership is very sexy to people, and I do think it is sexy, and I believe that everybody should own a business because of all the benefits of it. But as long as you understand, it takes work, and it takes time for you to figure out what business is the best for you. And so that's why you work with somebody like myself, right? And who will bring you to somebody like Ari. If one of those brands is a good fit, that's just like what you have to do. And you have to spend the time and know that it might take you 3 months. It might take you a year. I have a candidate right now. It's actually an ORAT guy, which is Michael's group. And it's been 3 years. And I think there might be a chance that he actually goes through and gets excited about it. But he actually learned about. We had Alex from your superhero. What's a driver event business?
Driver event superheroes.
Yeah,
Yeah, driver event superheroes. Yep.
Alex. Alex. Yeah, he presented on one of these.
Oh.
And so my candidate saw that, and he was like, I want to learn more about that brand. Unfortunately, his territory was taken, but he learned about the industry.
Yeah.
On the Zoom call, and he's looked at a lot of things, and that business model might be a good alignment. Unfortunately, your territory was taken, but there's one or two other brands out there that are good too. So that's what we do, is we try to find available territory, the best brand possible. But let's go into just high level of your other brands, and I'll preface this. We're going to go really high level, but I did put in the chat or the question and answer, if you guys want information on any of these brands, just put your information in, and we'll send you details on all these business models.
Yeah. Dryer Vent Superheroes is a sister brand to Up Closets, also part of Home Run Franchising in the service space. Again, another great home-based business. We call them low overhead lean labor models. One truck, one technician, residential and commercial opportunity. Another great brand out of Salisbury, North Carolina is a brand called Richard's Painting. Richard Gould is the founder and CEO. He's a long career painter, although you do not have to be a painter to own this business. Multiple revenue streams. So we don't just do painting, we do indoor and outdoor painting, we do cabinet painting, but we offer other things. We do deck repair, handyman work, drywall repair, epoxy garage floors, residential and commercial. You start with one painter and then you build your business from there. This is a little different from other painting concepts. Most painting franchises rely on subcontractors, which is not the model that Richard has built. This is an employee model, which changes how you go to market, how you leverage your employees. And this is kind of cliche. He always says this, you don't go to McDonald's and a subcontractor doesn't take your order, right? It's an employee, somebody that's been trained by the system. On the flip side, another great brand that does offer a subcontractor model is a brand called Lawn Value. Dave and Todd are the founders. They are based in Nashville, Tennessee. Actually, where Thomas is based, so we have a couple Nashville owners. Lawn Value is a landscaping company. They are what I consider a baby brand. They have one corporate location and that is it. Although we have a pretty full pipeline and we have a lot of interest, they do utilize subcontractors. And they offer about 25 different revenue streams because in reality, in Vegas, yeah, you do need to mow your lawn if you have lawn 12 months out of the year, but in a lot of different areas you don't. So there's, Christmas lights and snow removal and a lot of different services. And these guys are great. They've built a really strong model and they have some really, really nice revenue numbers from a corporate standpoint to share. And they're doing some really nice kind of offerings for the first maybe 5 or 6 locations. They're going to give extra territory as kind of an added benefit to being an early franchisee in the system. And they're going to be giving some royalty holidays, which is really nice. I'm going to jump over to senior care. The Care Concierge, which is actually the newest Red Rock franchise brand. They are also a baby brand. One location in Rhode Island. Paul Jones is their founder and CEO. He runs a really nice corporate location, but it's senior placement. So it's different from other senior care brands that require a lot of caregivers, 24/7 type of care. We are placing patients, the kids might come and say mom and dad or mom or dad need to be placed into a facility. So the franchisees work off the referrals that they give to these facilities. Not only are the families their customer, but the facilities, the senior home facilities, the rehab centers, they're doing placement in those facilities and they're making $6,000-$7,000 placements and they're collecting, the majority of that. They can have one employee or they can do it themselves. Typically, those are really high margin. Senior placement is a really high margin business for a franchisee and it's a low overhead business. You don't need a lot of crew like you do with non-medical in-home care. I'm going to jump over to the pet space. Pet Passages is our only brick and mortar concept. It is a pet funeral home and cremation type of franchise. They are based in Rochester, New York. Mike Harris is the founder and CEO, and he runs that with his wife, Andrea. Mike is a fourth generation funeral home director. He grew up in a funeral home. His family is funeral directors. He jumped over to this because this is a non-regulated industry. There's no regulation in pet cremation. So there's a lot of backyard crematories that don't follow any type of process. Unfortunately, it's very sad. We really cater to pet parents, right? We want franchisees that are either current pet owners or have experienced the loss of a pet. That's extremely important to Mike. We're at about 25 locations right now. That's going to be a higher investment. When you're talking about home services, you're like Bo said with Up Closets, you're at that about 150,000, maybe 200 with some working capital. This is a brick and mortar. This is a build out. We typically go into a commercial space. Mike always says, this is a destination business. If you build it, they will come. We've had people drive up to 4 hours to get to one of our locations because of all the proprietary things. And I could talk about these brands for hours, but everything that he's done is proprietary in terms of tracking and making sure that this family can put their loved pet to rest in a way that, honors their memory. We have Pet Butler, which is another pet business. That's a little bit different. That's going to be a home-based business, multiple revenue streams, residential and commercial. It's a business where, you have one person, maybe it's the owner, maybe they hire somebody to go out and pick up pet waste at homes and businesses, but we offer other services. We can do walking, we can do sitting, we can do transportation. So there's lots of different things that we can do. We also have a call center that is structured to reach out and confirm appointments or take inbound calls. They'll even, if somebody's credit card has expired, they'll even call and get the new credit card so that the franchisee is not losing money. Frios Gourmet Pops. This is an unbelievable brand, and I wish it was available on the West Coast, but it's not yet. It is based out of Mobile, Alabama. Cliff Kennedy is the CEO, but not the founder. He was a franchisee back in 2018, was eating the key lime pie pop in traffic as a franchisee and decided, I want this whole system. So he bought it, he changed it, he restructured it. Think modern day ice cream truck. It's happiness on a stick. Our franchisees are happiness hustlers, and we drive what we call the Sweet Ride. Those are our vans that we go out to festivals and events, and we offer wholesale. Not quite available in California, Nevada. We are in Arizona. We're working on the rest of the West Coast in terms of distribution. All the manufacturing is done in Mobile. We don't have a third party doing the manufacturing. And they're hand poured pops, which make them so unique and so delicious. And if you enter into our process as a potential franchisee, you'll get samples and they're delicious.
I got samples. Cliff sent me a whole case and I loved them. I was interested.
Man, they're good.
He came out with like a protein one.
Yes.
I don't know if I didn't really love the protein one, but the other, the bad for you ones, well, not that bad for you. Really good. I like that business model a lot. I think it's
cool.
It's a cool business. I mean, it's not like an empire builder, but it's definitely a business that can make money in the future if you could run it correctly. But I like that. I think it's a cool business model. Not necessarily for me, but there are a good fits for people like that type of business. I do like it, and I like Cliff a lot too.
It's a nice side hustle, I'll tell you. It is.
Yeah, it's a lot of cash too. I like that. So a lot of the brands you take on sometimes they don't have a ton of locations, right? We in the industry we call them emerging franchise. So when a candidate's looking, going, wait, you have only one or two corporate locations, you have no other locations. This is more risky, which makes sense. There's not 100, 200, 500 locations. And it's also a little bit risky for you as a franchise development company because you're basically investing in them that at some point this brand could potentially sell 5, 10, 20, 30 units a year for the next few years and grow into a mature franchise. What advice do you have for somebody that really loves the franchise or the business model, but there's not a lot of validation calls? What's their process? Because you must get this a lot because some of the brands are emerging.
Yeah. I mean, you really want to, if you're coming into a system that doesn't have, like Bo said, 20, 30, 40, 100 locations, like you are considered, you want to be somebody that we would consider like an empire builder. Getting in on the front side of a franchise system is not necessarily a bad thing, but you do want to validate, right? Even if a franchise system has franchisees and validators, that doesn't always make them, that doesn't always make it, that's kind of, some people are like, it's great, but at the same time, everybody's business is going to be a little bit different. Everybody's territory is going to be a little bit different. You still want to talk through things. There's a lot of brands, and we talk about like Lawn Value, for instance, they have no locations, but they're committed to the success of their franchisees. And so you get in on the early end, you're going to get the support and the guidance and the hand holding. You're still going to get support if you're number 20 or number 30 or number 40. But we're talking about these owners are going to be a phone call away if anything happens. As they build, they're going to add field coaches. They're going to add support, part of their corporate team. But you have, a direct line to the founder every step of the way. Your success is their success. So if you don't succeed, they can't grow their brand. So it's extremely important that not only they pick the right owners for their first 5, 10 locations, but, I think it's an amazing opportunity for somebody that's looking for a business that gets in on the front side. I don't want to be franchisee number 100. I mean, that's great for some people. I want to be one of those first ones because I want to be the one that helps set the stage for the growth and the success of the brand. I think it's exciting. I think you end up getting a lot of advantages that you maybe wouldn't get if you came in later.
Love that. So yes, there is more risk in general, but you have to understand the risk. A lot of what as franchise consultants, what I tell candidates is, look, you have to really, if there's not a lot of validation, you have to look at the background and the credibility of the leadership ownership team. There is great opportunity because if you do find a brand that becomes a big brand, you own the best real estate in that space, right? You have the best territories, and oftentimes that could lead to a very successful business. It's not for everybody. Some people are way more risk adverse. They're going to probably invest into a larger brand, which has 200 or 300 units, but that does not mean you're going to be successful. So we want to explain all this as you go through the process. What are you seeing right now in 2026? I've heard, and it's not so much the people I'm working with, but other franchise consultants have said that people are getting a little bit squeamish at the end of going through the buying investment process. What are you seeing? If that's the case, what you're seeing a little bit, is it the economy? Or are you seeing just growth? I'm seeing still a lot of activity, and I don't really see people getting cold feet, but a lot of people have told me more and more people getting cold feet. So it's just curious from your perspective what you're seeing.
We've actually had this conversation with some of our brands and some franchise consultants a few times this week. So yeah, it's come up. I know you said that you're still seeing a really nice high volume of candidates. It has slowed. I think it depends on the lead source that you use as a consultant. It has slowed a little bit. Maybe it's picked up a little bit this week. I think a lot of this is time of year. Their kids are getting out of school, they're taking vacations. Jason and I call late August, early September franchise season. People are back from their summers, right? Their kids are going back to school and they're realizing the end of the year is almost here. And if I'm going to buy a business, I want it before the end of this year because I want to take that write-off in regards to my taxes. So we are coming into franchise season very soon. And so we talk about, like, right now is building the infrastructure to make sure those pipelines are full so that you can potentially get some folks into business, September, October, November. I mean, as a consultant, one of my biggest years that I did 9 placements in November because I had people that came to me in the spring and the summer looking for a business, and they all just happened to close that 1 month. I'll circle back. I do have a point here, but when you're thinking about your fourth quarter as a consultant or, whatever you're doing, you're building in that fourth quarter what you're going to be doing at the beginning of the year. So January, February, those are your closes and those are the people that you're putting into business. But yes, back to your question, Bo, it has slowed. I have had people that have gotten all the way to the end and have said, for whatever reason, this isn't the right opportunity, or I don't feel like I have enough, financially to move forward, or the territory is not right for me. And I think part of it is the time of year that we're in. I think the other part of it is what people see on TV, the news. And what I always say is, yeah, there are things going on in the world. Gas prices are high, food prices are high. There is uncertainty, but we talk about, like, when there was a recession, and then we talked about COVID, and we talked about presidential elections. Are you really going to let what's going on in the White House, and I understand that prices are high, so people might not be able to afford things, but interest rates aren't crazy. They're higher. They're not out of control. Are you going to let something like that stop you from buying a business? If now's not the right time, when is it the right time? People don't stop having babies or getting married because of who the president is, right? So you have to make that decision for yourself and people need to stop looking at like the outlying things that are going on in the world. If you truly want a business and you truly want to own a franchise, then get out there and do the due diligence and talk to people to make sure it's the right opportunity for you.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, yes, there's a lot of things going on, but I also think like there's no better time to build your own economy than right now. I don't want to have to be reliant. I've seen too many people call me and they got displaced from a job that they spent 15, 20 years at, and they got like a little bit of a severance thing, and it's like I don't know. I just wouldn't want to be in that position. Like it's just like you're like kind of you spend 20 years. I don't know. Just name any company. I'm not going to name a company, but 20 years at a big Fortune 500 company, and then they just want to downsize, and you're just worthless trash. That's why I never want to be put in that position. I don't want to like. That's really insulting if you really look at it. It's so freaking insulting, and that's why I've always been self-employed because I don't want somebody telling me I'm not worth a shit, right? And that's basically what happens. Is we have to downsize. We had, we it's terrible. And so that's why I wrote a book, why, from paycheck to freedom, why everybody should own a business or a side hustle. Because I think it's very important that you're not relying on one revenue stream because you're going to go, one thing happens and you don't have 12 months of reserves or 6 months of reserves, you're filing BK. And that's the reality of it is people need to build and they need to build now. And that's why I'm passionate about doing these events on a Saturday because not that I have to, it's because I think I want to help people. I want to share knowledge. I want to share my smart friends' knowledge to the world. And whether a franchise, a business, or you bootstrap something, we all need to get into some sort of ownership mentality and own, whether it's real estate, whatever it is. And Michael Zuber, who's going to speak next, is going to talk about, he's an economics guy. He'll talk about what he's seeing in that space, which would be interesting. I always go to his YouTube channel and listen because I don't pay attention like he does, but I need to. Ari, in kind of like closing, well, one is I appreciate you showing up when you're on vacation and out of town. Two is what advice, last parting advice? I mean, you kind of gave it, but any additional parting advice to anybody that's watching this now or when the replay goes out and it's shared to many people? What would your advice be with like, and I would speak specifically to the franchise industry, like why a franchise versus maybe a non-franchise and any insights there?
I mean, as far as business ownership, you can go out and you can start Bo's painting business, right? You can do that. You can start it today. But if you really want to get into a business, if you really want to know how to not only launch, but get out and market your business and, have growth, have success, looking at a franchise opportunity is such a better option and alternative. I think a lot of people have a myth that franchising is Dutch Brothers and Chick-fil-A and those are only franchises that are available when that's not true. There's so many franchise opportunities out there that fit everybody's needs in terms of what type of business you're looking for. So, what we always talk about with the franchise community is if you're working in a job, and Bo said it, spend a day on LinkedIn and look at all the people that are looking for a job that have been laid off that, depended on that income that, worked for a company for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that they're just a number, right? If you want to take your future in your own hands, franchise opportunities are a great way to kind of just take that back, be your own boss, decide your own fate. So when you think about, and if you're like, well, what type of business would I go into? I don't know how to paint. Well, that's great, because you don't have to know how to paint, right? You have to know how to, be out there, be a leader, represent your community, be out there and market your business, market yourself as a franchisee. And so that's what the infrastructure and the support is set up to do, is to help you in terms of launching your business and that ongoing support. So when you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't want to go to work, or I don't want to look for a job, think about what are the things that make you excited to start your day. Check those boxes. What makes me excited to be a business owner? What are some of the things that I would love to do in my community to, launch this business, to build relationships? So think about all the different aspects of business ownership. And yeah, I mean, get out there, talk to somebody, make a phone call, send a LinkedIn message, get out there and put yourself out there in terms of, yeah, I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to be a business owner. I want to own a franchise and get into that community. Franchising is an amazing opportunity for people. You kind of have to just explore it and give it an opportunity.
Thank you so much. All right, Michael, do you have any last questions, or you?
No, I just want to applaud you for getting on the weekend and while on vacation. That's kind of shows your commitment to the cause. So thank you for that.
Well, I love it. I love franchising. So I'll talk about it any chance I get. So nice to meet you. Thanks, Bo.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. I appreciate you doing this for us.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Have a great day.
You too.
Later.
All right, guys. So we're moving right along, and now we're gonna go into Michael's segment. I think he always does a segment. I think it's very important to get his perspective. I know there's a lot of fear in the world right now, and I think I'm curious what you're seeing, what the numbers look like, because it's not just what you're seeing; it's actually what's the data, right? The data. So. Then what's the opportunities for us?
Absolutely. The first thing I want to say to folks is, if you have any questions about the economy, housing, whatever, put the questions in the comments. I will riff for a little bit, but really what I love about these is really trying to figure out what's top of mind for you. We have, I think, 60 some odd folks still watching. So I'm sure you have questions about the economy, about real estate, maybe about commercial real estate, maybe about syndicators burning $15 million of investor capital. I'm happy to talk about any and all things. Again, I will riff for 5 minutes, but hopefully you guys put in questions and we can really get what's important to you. The first thing to talk about, probably obviously, is we're recording this on Saturday, June 6th. And unless you're living under a rock, Friday, June 5th was an ugly day, right? The NASDAQ was down by the largest amount ever. Right, largest single point drop ever. On a percentage basis, that was about 4%. Pretty ugly day. And it's really interesting because if you go back to Friday morning, we got our third jobs reading of the week. We get JOLTS on Tuesday, ADP on Wednesday, and get BLS on Friday. All three jobs reports were awesome, strong. So how can, adding 172,000 jobs be bad for the economy? Why would the stock market drop 4% because of a strong jobs market? Well, you have to understand that the stock market is a very levered investment. It was definitely leaning towards a dovish Fed. In fact, the last Fed meeting was an 8-4 vote, meaning 4 dissents about being dovish as opposed to being even. And what we quickly learned was, with the strong JOLTS report, ADP report, BLS report, is the odds of a rate hike. Yes, folks, a rate hike are increasing. The odds of a rate hike now are over 50%. The odds of a rate cut in 2026 are exactly 0. So it's going to be very interesting. So again, I think the market is off sides. Obviously, we have this conflict with Iran, which is still not resolved. And if you believe what the oil experts are saying, in the next 2 to 4 weeks, we are going to see physical oil become a problem, right? It's going to start in Asia, probably in Japan first. It will then morph to Europe, and then eventually it will land on the US shores. Now, if you don't track the market as much as I do, you probably would say something like, hey, Michael, we produce enough oil, we're going to be fine. Well, no. Oil is a commodity that's traded in dollars around the world. So if you have Japan and Malaysia and the UK and Germany and France and blah, 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 starving for oil, they're simply going to raise the price. And yes, it won't be like the 1970s. If you're old like me and you remember gas lines and you remember going to the fill up the gas tank on every other day based on your license plate, it won't be like that. But trust me when I say, if this thing isn't over by the middle of July, you could be paying $6 a gallon. And in California, it might be $8 a gallon, right? Thank Gavin Newsom for the extra $2. Thank God he's not governor in a little while. But yeah, it's going to be a problem. And here's the problem with $8 gas in California and $6 national gas is something called demand destruction. You're going to have people make different choices. And, the old economist joke is the cure for higher prices is higher prices. But that just means consumer behavior changes. And what else happens? Inflation. If you guys want to know about a commodity that is literally in everything, it's oil, right? And, there's a very good chance, folks, that the next CPI reading has inflation back over 4%. So all of this to say is rates are going to be higher for longer, which we talk about in the daily financial news 5 days a week. It's going to cause deals to be reevaluated. We can talk about Brandon Turner and how he burned $15 million of investor capital and how he's not the first, nor will he be the last. Everybody made a bad bet on rates. They bet rates would be lower. They had short-term debt. If you want to understand the difference between, or the similarities, I should say, similarities between the great financial crisis, which was residential properties, and the catastrophe that is still growing in commercial, short-term debt, bad assumptions, easy money, lots of new investors. I do believe the opportunity ahead of us in commercial or multifamily is bigger than it was in residential, at least on a dollar amount. So I'm pretty excited about what's coming. Buying stuff at 60% of debt is exciting. Buying stuff 50% of replacement cost is exciting. So these are all the opportunities that are coming. The last thing I'll say, and I'm really thankful for having Bo on the channel every Wednesday. We talk every Wednesday at 10:30, I think, Pacific, is, I've built a career in tech. I was in the top 1% of what I did. I saved money, bought assets. But what I've learned the last 8 years being retired is there's lots of other ways to do it. My way is the slow and steady way. But Bo's triangle method, that book he's written on Amazon, is the right way for lots of people, and I encourage people to check that out. So, those are what I came prepared to talk about. Happy to answer any and all questions. Hopefully, you guys have questions out there about real estate or the economy, or Bo or Bill can throw questions at me. But what's on everybody's mind? Why are you here? Why are you listening to this? How can I help?
Yeah, so I'll jump in first just because we talked about this and it really stuck with me. Was you haven't bought real estate in 3-4 years because you don't need to buy real estate. You've already accumulated a lot of rental units. But the last time we spoke, you said you're raising money. I mean, that's probably your own money, but you're raising capital, and you said you're ready to. You believe the opportunity is coming because you're raising capital currently out of your wherever you raise it from your family bank, and you're getting ready to deploy, and you're thinking that the opportunity is going to be in the, let's call it 10 to 40 unit, 50 unit space. Is that where you're looking to deploy that? And talk about that, and talk about what you did in whatever the year that was, 2012, from where you went from 8 to 80 units.
Yeah, so I think that's so we'll talk about that first. So one of the things that Bo talked about earlier, and Trent, I think, talked about, is being somebody who's interested in learning. My story really starts with getting my ass kicked. I turned 7,000 bucks into 197 grand in the stock market. I thought I was a genius. And I actually said out loud that I'm smarter than Warren Buffett. And let me just tell you this, if you ever say those words, you're not. You're just not. What happened to me will happen to you is the market was rising and I did not recognize that the tide was rising and I got lucky. And what really happened to me is I quickly lost 80% of that, seemingly overnight. It was probably a 2 or 3 week period where I lost 80% of that before I went to cash. And that was a wake up call and a half because I had never seen 197 grand. Nobody in my family had ever scratched two nickels together. And I felt like a complete failure, like I let my family down. I was 30 years old at the time. And then I go to an event and learn about real estate. I get Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read 100 books and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this slow and steady. So I create a buy box, so for 3 years later, I have 8 houses and I think I'm the king, right? I got 8 houses, got more than anybody I know. My whole goal was to retire at 65 and have these 8 houses paid off, right? That's what I thought. That's, kind of Dave Ramsey-ish, right? I thought I would be free and clear at 65. And then I go to an event. Again, I pay to go to this event. This is not free online. I think it was $300. It was $300 back in 2006. So I don't know what that is today, $1,000. And I listened to a guy named Bruce Norris. And the whole title of the session was California Crash. And again, I'm a California investor. I'd already suffered a massive loss of 80%, and I did not want to do that again. All right. I'm a millionaire on paper, and I didn't want to lose everything. So I go to the event. I don't understand half the things he says, but I learn about the affordability index. So then I go research the affordability index, and I realize he's right. So what do I do? To Bo's point, I start selling all my houses. But better yet, I don't sell them, I exchange them. It's one of the beauty of the IRS codes for real estate. You can take all the equity from one asset, move it up to the next. There's a lot of subtleties in there, so go research it before you do anything. But yeah, we sold a house, bought units, sold a house, bought units. And if you want to have the exact math, it's in my first book, One Rental at a Time. You can get it on Amazon. It's a bestseller. But yeah, we end that at 80 units. But now fast forward to today. So I retired financially free at 45. My wife retired 3 years before that. We have, 40K in net cash flow and we live on, 14. So we don't need any more, right? We've already got more than enough. But I have been looking, right? I got this one real at a time thing. I live in a new city called Vegas. And I'm like, let's go buy another house. Let's just go do it again. And what I quickly realized is another house means nothing to me. Right? It doesn't move the needle. And it's just not exciting. However, after seeing the stupid deals that syndicators were doing and the fact that they were all going to lose money, and I have receipts. I called this back in 2021 and 22. I'm like, these guys are morons. They're going to lose everybody's money. I see the pain coming. I just talked to Ken McElroy. That video will come out tomorrow or on Monday. And yeah, there's tremendous opportunities coming. So what I look to do, to Bo's point, I've raised multiple seven figures so I can go shopping and write cash offers. But more importantly, I want to 1031 out of residential into more units. So, while one single family home means nothing to me, another 50 or 100 units bought at a 60% discount, like I did last time, that could be interesting. So I am getting excited again. I look to make 2 or 3 more moves. This might be the last time we really make any moves because we're getting really close to being 60, and I don't want to be making any moves after that. But yeah, I'm excited by what's coming. I might have the opportunity to do something like I did last time, take 8 units and 10 exit. Not to steal Grant Cardone's thing, but that's just how the math worked. We went from 8 to 80, and maybe this time I can go from 30 to 300 or 40 to 400. So I'm excited by what's coming. I do think it's the first inning. So you got to be a little bit patient, but you got to start early. You got to do the work now. You don't get ready when the deals are here. You got to get ready early so you can strike when the iron's hot. So I'm excited by what's coming.
I'm excited too. I got to put my real estate hat back on because it's been, when I moved to Vegas, I just stopped. You got to learn markets, right? Like it's just completely different than I was just buying in the Bay Area and I was buying in Indiana. So I knew those markets. But I do I like when there's deals. I like when there's a lot of deals because it's an easier time to be an investor, but also well, I agree with you that I'm so out of the game right now. I don't understand values like I used to. So I have to do the work there. Is there any questions in the chat?
Yes. Emil asks, as a newer agent, what's the best way to build relationships with lenders, attorneys, contractors, and other service providers that can become part of your long-term network?
If I was a new agent, I don't know that I would try to network there first because there's no money. The first thing I would do is I'd try to go figure out who all the real estate investors are in my market, right? I'd go to real estate meetups, but more importantly, I would be proactive. I would go to title, I would go to escrow. And if you have to pay for this, pay for it. But I would try to figure out who has bought more than one house in the last year. Because in any city, even a big city like Vegas, there's probably less than 100 people who bought more than one home in a year. And the reason that's important is those are investors. So I would try to figure out who the top 100 buyers are. I would then reach out to them, but I would reach out with value. So I would figure out what they were buying, right? Okay, hey, he bought house 1, 2, 3, and he bought house 4, 5, 6. What do they have in common? Well, they're all 20 years old. There's 3 bedrooms, 4. So I would try to figure out the buyer's buy box, and I would call them and say, hey, I'm, Joe Schmo. I see that you bought property 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. I think this is your buy box. I'm a new agent, but I'm a grinder. I'm a hustler. I just want to verify your buy box because I want to bring you more opportunities. So if I was looking to cash a check, which is what real estate agents should be doing, I wouldn't go to the service sector first. I mean, you eventually get there, but I would go try to eat, and I would eat by trying to service the investors in my market.
When I lived in California, I used to have a real estate investor club. I called it Thrive REIA, Real Estate Investor Association. And I moved here, and then I went back a couple years later, and we threw an event, and and somebody came up to me that I didn't know and said, by coming to your event, I met Mike, not you, Mike, a different Mike, and we've done like 15 deals together. So that's like low-hanging fruit, is to become a really good, not that it's easy, but become an investor-friendly agent. You should go to Michael's Zuber's One Rental at a Time channel and listen when he talks with Ty. Ty he's also one of my friends. I've bought deals from him. He's an investor-friendly agent. I think he has some like coaching programs too. But the point is, go on Zuber's channel, One Rental at a Time, at One Rental at a Time, I believe. We put it in the chat or the Q&A.
Yeah.
And go listen to those conversations with Ty, and I think that will encourage you. But I like the real estate investor space. I think those buyers continuously buy. So if you got really good at bringing like a fix and flip opportunities, or people that like to do co-living, or people like to do long-term rentals, there's an endless amount of supply there. Bill, is there any other questions in there?
Yeah, Lewis says, I'm going back into real estate investing after being out of it for over 10 years, looking to purchase 4 units. Do you have suggestions for financing? I think that can go for either of you.
I mean, yeah, if you're going to ask me first, again, in this environment, you have to realize that this is something I'll say that I didn't say in my intro, but I meant to. This might be hard for you to believe, but I personally believe the following statement with every fiber of my body. Today is the best buyer's market I have seen in real estate in over a decade. Now, some of you hear me say that and go, he's talking his book or whatever. What am I talking my book? I'm not selling you squat. That is what I believe. Why do I believe that? Well, if I'm a buyer, which all investors are buyers, what do I want? I want more supply. Check. I want less competition. Check. And I want more motivated sellers. Check. So again, that's just the mindset you have to have. If you are a doomer or a crash bro, and that's the content you're consuming, they're going to scare the bejesus out of you, and you're going to miss your opportunity. You need to understand that you need to write disrespectful offers, have a tight buy box, look every day, follow up 12 times. This stuff takes work, but the deals are out there. And you just need to believe it's the best market in the last decade, which it is, and just do the work, as Bo likes to repeat me. But back to financing. So in today's environment, the number one way I'm trying to finance deals is with seller financing. Again, I leverage tools like PropStream or Property Radar to figure out equity positions on deals that I'm writing. I'm writing two offers, a stupid low cash price and a seller finance price, because again, I want to get seller financing where appropriate, either as a first or a second. Next, for most of you, you're probably going to get DSCR loans. DSCR loans today, at least for many buyers, are actually better rates than conventional. You have points and prepays and things of that nature. But again, you could set it, forget it. You can get rates under 6 if you do 1.5, at least as of today's recording. It could change tomorrow. Who knows? And then obviously last, the thing that I wish I started with is house hacking. If I had to do my life over again, I would do everything I can to buy a fourplex at 18 or 19 and, get in for 3.5 or 5% down and just start my real estate journey at 20 instead of 30. I would have been financially free a lot sooner. So there's lots of options. And just Bo, feel free to add anything.
No, I loved everything you said. I think we've never had better lending products between an for a house hacking, FHA, okay, 97.5% financing. Plus there's down payment assistance too. You get into houses with 1% down on an owner occupied house hack. DSCR loans, you don't need to do income verification. It's all based on the potential or the cash flow of the property. Right? There's the fix and flip loans, 90% of purchase, 100% of repair cost. Come on. I mean, it's not a financing problem. It's a buy box and doing the work problem. They're out there, but I do agree with Zuber. If you don't have to find a deal and you just wait and you have built something or you have some liquidity, I think like when an opportunity comes, then you can really strike, and then you go from 8 to 80, right? 8 to 80. That's like a rap song.
That's the key. Is you gotta get ready to be ready. You don't get ready. Like David Goggins has this quote, "What are you training for?" I ain't training for blank. I just want to be ready when something happens. Right? That's the key. I will be ready. When I stumble across an opportunity to 10x my portfolio, you bet your ass I'll be ready.
And the beautiful thing is, because you've done the work, you don't have to. You're not in a position that you have to, which is like the position everybody should get to. Like when you don't have to do something. Who do banks want to lend money to? People who don't need money, right? So
exactly.
These are all lessons we can learn. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, we'll go into the last segment. We'll get everybody.
There's one more.
Okay.
Joseph asks, I am just starting to do real estate and I want to do fix and flip and also wholesaling. Michael, is this good to start now?
Well, again, you got to realize that wholesaling is a wonderful way to get into the game. You do have to watch the rules and regulations. Lots of cities and states are clamping down, making you get licensed. I don't know where you are, but don't do anything dirty. So figure out the rules of the road for your city, your state. I do think wholesaling is a lot harder than most people think. There's a lot of upfront costs. Again, you're the last to get paid. Although the beauty about wholesaling is it doesn't really take any meaningful capital. Right, you're getting a contract, you're selling a contract, and absolutely could be done. It creates chunk money, but not cash flow. Fix and flip also produces chunk money. You got to hold longer. You got to be careful though. You get into a flip in the wrong market, and the market turns on you. On my channel, I think it was 2024. I talked to Jason Pritchard, Omar, and Adrian, and all of them lost six figures January, February, and March because the market changed on them. So I know the flipping shows make it seem sexy and exciting, but there's real opportunity for material loss if you do it wrong. So best case, get involved with somebody who's doing it, learn from them. Don't try it on your own, would be my advice.
Oftentimes, I think it's maybe a little bit easier to start with a rental property because then you can kind of learn the industry a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like a buy box. There's less risk. If you're buying a rental property, just read Michael's book, One Rent All the Time, understand that, listen to his channel. I would probably, if it makes sense, do a rental property first as opposed to doing a flip. Because a flip, you can lose 50, 100 grand pretty easily.
Oh, yeah.
A rental property, they're a little bit more forgiving. But we don't know your situation, so
Mhm.
there's plenty of communities like Zuber's school community. There's a lot of people that you would probably want to go into something like that and network with people, and like that's how you're going to learn. You're going to be in these conversations. What do you have, like different micro tribes? Twice a day, there's guys and gals in his group that lead different conversations.
Yep.
I would be
Yep.
doing something like that as opposed to be buying first. I'd be getting in those rooms and those conversations. That probably is the best thing for you. So check it out. We'll put the link in the Q&A. All right. Any last things, or can we save the best for the last? All
We're
right.
saving the best for last. Go.
Best for last. All right. Well, good. All right. So my segment is called "How to Get SBA Financing to Buy Your First Business." I'm actually gonna, if Bill allows me to give them permission, I'll give them access to my video course. We'll have to figure that out when we meet on tomorrow. But anybody that
I've already done it and people have already signed up. So
okay, cool. So that's like 12 hours of like the SBA process and what everything looks like. I should say because Bill really helped me. We also wrote a book called How to Get SBA Financing to Buy Your First Business. We also wrote a book that Zuber was referencing, From Paycheck to Freedom. That was with Tom Wheelwright. He's Kiyosaki's CPA. And he actually got Kiyosaki to write the foreword to my first book. I mean, that's pretty sweet.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you can go get those on Amazon if you want. I will plug something that every quarter going forward we do is I do have a small cohort group that we do. You do have to pay for it, but the premise of it is it's a 7-week program, and we take you through the full buying experience with 7 to 10 other people in that group, so you collectively. And the idea isn't that I take an upfront fee, but the idea is that you give me an upfront fee because it's a commitment. And then after you graduate this 8-week training, 7-week training, you have 9 months to invest in a business through our team. And if you do, you get credited back the money. If you don't, I keep the money to pay my staff and contract employee or independent contractors. But we do that anyways. We're doing a webinar June 25th. If you want to learn about that, I like doing it that way, to be honest with you, because what I find is a lot of people like to put their toes in the water and they're not serious. So that actually makes people serious. So I like it. So we're doing one of those. If you're serious, that might be a good option. If not, we'll still help you. So how to get SBA financing to buy your first business. SBA financing is the best financing out there. It's also the most dynamic to learn, meaning there's so many moving parts with SBA. But I'll just walk through a case study, a mock case study. So we learned about the franchise Up Closet. I'm going to use that as an example. Up Closet, my initial investment was $150,000, which included working capital. I put down 10%, so $15,000. The bank finances the rest. Okay, so I just got into this business. Now, I know it's going to be hard work. I got to get the thing running. 2 years later, the business grows, and it was a home-based business model, but I've grown so much now that I go, hey, I'd love to own a little office condo with a roll-up door. Well, you can get 100% financing up to 100% financing on an SBA 7A expansion. So then I own my first building, and then I'm doing so well, maybe I accelerate the depreciation of that building by doing a cost segregation study. So there's ways of expanding with little money out of pocket. So first, you're $15,000 out of pocket. Now you own a warehouse, and you occupy that with your business, but you're only occupying, say, 60% of the space. Well, you could do a house hack. I call it a business hack, and sublease out or lease out that 40% space in that building. And now that's covering most of your debt on that building. And you got it all with 100% financing on a business expansion. Then Ari tells us that, hey, look, Jim has been running Up Closets 30 minutes away, and he built this great business. They're doing whatever top line revenue, and here's the margins. Well, it's the same type of business. I go and get 100% financing to acquire another up closet that's already built and existing. He's been running it for 9, 10 years. He wants to retire. Boom. So you see that whole movement over a 5 or 7 year period didn't take much capital. What did it really take? It took maybe the initial $20,000 plus you're investing cash flow into getting more trucks over time to grow your franchise. So that's how I want you to think. That's what's so exciting about SBA financing. I mean, there's just a million and one ways you can go with it. What do you need?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but one of the things that always got me and why I love our weekly conversations on my channel, thank you for that, is I thought real estate investing was like the Swiss Army knife of lending, right? We've got conventional, DSCR, seller financing, sub two, options, rent to own, all of these things. And then you and I get talking for like 17 seconds. And you simply said, basically, hold my beer, right? Because that's the power of what you like. I always call you the concierge to small business lending, because in a 15-minute conversation with somebody, you can understand who they are, what they're looking for, and you can give them 3 options, right? You're low liquidity. Okay, go get an equity partner. Oh, this or that on the business. We'll get seller to carry back 10% in a no interest balloon. Again, it was always mind-boggling to me that I thought real estate was the best Swiss Army knife for borrowing, and small businesses by far, right, are better. And we're just lucky to have you being the concierge to small business. So yeah, it's always shocking to me what you can do for people. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's all about, I started 28 years ago in lending and doing conventional loans, and then hard money loans, and commercial loans, and then now the last 8 years focused on SBA loans. I've seen every loan in every market cycle, and I've done flicks and flips. I don't talk about this a lot, but I'm like the qualified manager for a large fund that does hundreds of millions of dollars of fix and flip and DSCR loans. But the point is I've been there, been around. I understand lending. SBA is definitely very interesting to understand, but the people that do understand how to use it are going to most likely win, obviously, if they do the work and make sure they're buying the right business, because you could also fail if you buy the wrong business and you're signing a personal guarantee. And if the loan amount's over 350, but if there's any specific SBA questions, I'm always happy to answer them for you. But basically, you can build buildings, construction. You can buy RV parks, anything that has a business component to it. It can't be an investment like buying a multifamily, no. But if it's a business, they consider self-storage eligible for SBA. Grocery stores, they have a new program for grocery stores. It doesn't have to have real estate. It can have real estate. If it has real estate, we can amortize the loan over 25 years versus 10 years. But we do franchise startups. We could do startups non-franchise. Pretty much you name it. And right now, they just came out with a new program where we can actually have a lot more than 5 million. It's a new program that the SBA administrator rolled out. I will say this. There is also a 504 loan, which is just for real estate. Then there's a 7A loan. There's even a USDA B&I loan for rural area. So there's all these programs. So going back to like a lot of the conversations today, which Trent talked about, he actually took an underwriting class in SBA, and he's not even in lending, but there's a little bit to learn, but we have a lot of resources out there for you. So today, I don't know if I really even introduced myself. I just assume people know me. That's kind of stupid, right? Because somebody could be their first time here. Anyway, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm going to wrap today's session up and ask Zuber to ask me any questions he thinks are interested in. We'll get out here early because I want a carne asada burrito for some reason. So anyways, Bo Eckstein, 48 years old, 28 years in lending, didn't go to college, got into real estate, been a real estate broker since 2007, originally licensed as a salesperson in 2001. Got burnt out of residential loans, been through the 2000 downturn, owned a lot of real estate that didn't cash flow, didn't know anything about real estate investing then, just was speculating. Ended up moving back to the Bay Area and got into house flipping. and hard money lending first. Then I would fund these flippers, and I said, "Oh, I could flip houses." So I had a 500 credit score, but I was smart enough to partner with a money person and a contractor. We did a lot of house flips, and then I didn't really love house flipping, so I started buying rental properties out of state.
Mhm.
And I didn't really. I spent years doing that. Didn't really love that. Did okay. Did good. I did very well in house flipping. I did decent in investing out of state. And then I found business ownership, and I flipped the switch, and I came up with the triangle method. Top of the pyramid is operating tax strategy. This side is own a cash flowing business, and then invest in more real estate. That's the triangle method. That's actually the third book that I'm going to say I'm writing. That Bill's helped me write, I should say. And the title of the book, the working title of this is broke at the finish line. And then it goes into like why, basically why the triangle method could change that. But the title of the book is broke at the finish line. And the reason I'm writing that book, Zuber, is because I look at hundreds and hundreds of people's financial statements and all that stuff. And there's one basic reality is that even these $200,000 and $300,000 and $400,000 earners that are keeping up with the Joneses, they never really had the discipline with money.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them. I spent, it comes in, goes out, don't pay attention. So that's why that book is coming out. But Bill, I don't know if there's any questions about SBA. I mean, I'm giving them the course to go it through. And then if you complete the course, you'll see inside that little course, there's some resources and some bonus videos, but there's also a link to schedule a call with me. So it's better if we just jump on a one-on-one call and talk about like what you're trying to do. If you're trying to buy a business or like what type of business, or just financing conversations. I've been around the block. I have a lot of good resources, and I want to help 1 million people over the next 10 years, essentially. And lastly, Bill, if you're there, if you don't mind putting in the Q&A that link to yourperfectbiz.com. If you guys want to do something fun, and it only takes 90 seconds. I shouldn't say we haven't worked all the kinks out of this, but if you fill out that input within 5 minutes, it'll email you a PDF of different franchise models. It's not the end all be all, but it's a good place to get. It's going to take some of the things you enter in based on our we have about 200 franchises we've taken the data from, and it will send you a customized PDF. And just take this and say, hey, that's like a really high level overview of different business models that will fit with you. When you really want to go through the process, you can set up a call with our team, and we will, at no cost, take you through a full process to see if owning a franchise makes sense, or if you want to do a business acquisition, the steps to buy a business using SBA financing, and what to look for, how to position the deal, and go on to all those nuances. Zuber, any kind of closing remarks, questions that you might want to ask me or anything like that?
No, I think at the end of the day, especially if you're a W-2 employee, there are other opportunities. Again, I said in my introduction that I thought I would work till I was 65. I think that's an outdated model. I think there's going to be more solopreneurs going forward. I think AI and whatnot is going to empower a lot of us to create solo enterprises. And if you want the cheat code, it is definitely franchise, right? If you want an appetizer, vending, which is another thing you've talked about a bunch. Again, folks, at the end of the day, Bo's the small business concierge. So lots of you are thinking about it. You don't know where to go. I would book 15 minutes with Bo and figure it out.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for taking your Saturday again, Zuber. It's always a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the conversations with Trent and Ari, and it's always interesting. Guys, get plugged in. We gave you all the links and resources for everybody. Zuber, you're going to be writing a third book, right?
I am. I'm working on it all the time. Yes.
And are you allowed to say the title or not?
Yeah, it's The Everyday Wealth Builder. I actually bought that domain because Bo said buy the domain, so I did. But yes, the next book will be called The Everyday Wealth Builder.
Perfect. Could you give us a little overview of why that name and why that book, and what's the kind of high level of it?
The high level of it is the system we're operating in is broken, right? If you go to your Google search or AI and type in the average American, you really learn that we're fat, we're broke, we're divorced, we're addicted to stuff. And, that's unfortunate. We live in the greatest country in the world, and getting rich or wealthy is a process. That's what people don't understand. Getting rich or wealthy is a process. Yes, it takes sacrifice. Yes, it takes discipline. Yes, it takes time. But, I would give up 10 years of my life to live a 50 amazing years. So, that's basically the crux of it. The book's probably going to be in 3 sections. The first section is, the system's broken. So we all get on the same page. Step 2 are some examples that I've talked to over the years. And step 3 is going to be action items like, okay, you believe me now the system's broken? Get to work, fight against the system. So that's what I'm thinking right now.
I love it. I love it. It's what we need. Bill, is there any questions that we didn't answer? Any closing remarks?
No, I think you should promote the cohort again because it's coming up soon, June 25th, 4 p.m. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So June 25th, I'm doing a webinar, and it's going to be about why you should join the cohort. And essentially, you'll learn about the industry, and we take you through some slides and different things. And then essentially the cohort's usually about 2 or 3 weeks behind that. And what I would say about it is like, if you're serious, like it's a proven way to really get a deep dive, probably like an accelerated process, because I found that when there was a group of people kind of collaborating on Zoom, they really got them a lot of value out of it. It wasn't, I mean, obviously I could take credit and say, oh, I teach them everything and it's broken out really well. I mean, I think we did a great job on the curriculum, but I routinely join cohorts. Like I've been in 5 or 6 different cohorts in the last couple of years. It's an accelerated way to learn, essentially. And so that's what I did. And the outcome is to own a proven business model that replaces your W-2. So I'd encourage you to at least attend and see if that's a good fit for you. I'm excited about it because I think it's when I tell people what I've done that work in my industry, they're like, wow, that's amazing. I should have thought of that idea. Instead of like the average person goes on to like a biz buy sell, and they'll go click on a listing and they'll get called by somebody, and they don't really have a system or a process. So we give you a system and a process, and you get to work with some of my team members that are really smart. Actually, one of the ladies that had mentored me comes in and we'll collaborate this time for this group. So there's a lot of good things about it. I don't want to sit here and sell anything to you, but just go to the webinar. Anyway, as always, I appreciate you. I don't know if you found me from Eventbrite or my YouTube channel or potentially Zuber's YouTube channel or some email or an ad, who knows? But I'm glad you're here, and I hope this continues to grow. And we send out a newsletter every Sunday. I always tell Zuber to set his newsletter up, but he never does. I send out a newsletter every Sunday with like really good stuff. Short reads and useful links to events or interviews I've been on or done, or just interesting things. Like if I think a topic that Zuber interviewed to some other guest, I might put a clip in there for people. So good to the point. SBA topics, of course, franchises, recently closed deals, those type of things, like really concise stuff. So and then we do not only the Real Estate and Business Expo, we do a Business Ownership Summit quarterly, and various other virtual events, mostly all virtual. And then I always attend Michael's event, which is here in Las Vegas in February.
It'll be January this year, not to miss the dates. We moved it because of Valentine's Day and the Super Bowl. We moved.
Oh, cool. Well, anyways, that's a great event to go. There'll be 350, 400 people that are really diehard. And the one thing I will tell you about Zuber's community is they're extremely dedicated real estate investors and everyday wealth builders. Mm-hmm. And everybody I talk to in that group love it. So get into that network as well, because that's part of the triangle method is own real estate. So anyways, thank you. Bill, will you mind hitting end webinar? Because I can't, or somebody. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Zuber. I'll talk to you soon.
Later.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.